Chapter 1739. Bai Qing didn't seem to understand the meaning of Granny Long's words. Her face was still calm. He lifted his chin slightly and said solemnly, "Grandma Long is right. I've been ordered to come here for a very important matter." Grandma Long raised her eyebrows and looked at Bai Qing meaningfully. "Oh? What is it? Protector Bai, please speak your mind. Please listen to me slowly." Bai Qing picked up the teacup and took a sip of the spiritual tea. Only then did she explain slowly, "A few months ago, our country's patrol team discovered traces of a divine beast outside the border and reported the news to the Heaven Extremes Mountain. Tianju Mountain sent experts and guards to investigate and found the trace of the divine beast, the glazed fire dragon. As everyone knows, the glazed fire dragon is an ancient divine beast, an extremely noble and rare divine dragon. Since ancient times, the dragon tribe has been extinct. There are less than 5 divine dragons left in the world. The experts and guards of the Heaven End Mountain quietly followed the glazed fire dragon and finally found its lair, which was in the vast ruins of God." Hearing this, Granny Long and the rest of the god's disciples were all shocked. They could not believe that there was a divine dragon in the ruins of God, and it was a rare glazed fire dragon. Grandma Long could not help but ask, "Guardian Bai, where is the nest of the glazed fire dragon? What happened after that? Did you succeed?" Protector Bai smiled bitterly and shook his head. "The nest of the glazed fiery dragon is in the famous Fiery Mountain. That area was a sea of fire with a radius of hundreds of thousands of miles. No one could enter it. The experts and guards of Tianju Mountain risked their lives to enter the flaming mountain, but they did not find the glazed fire dragon. Instead, they suffered heavy casualties. However, before they left, they found a piece of heavenly fire glazed gold in the underground mine of the flaming mountain." After that, Bai Qing took out a square sandalwood box from his space ring and placed it on the table in front of him. The box was exquisite and beautiful, revealing a luxurious and precious aura. In addition, there was a violent and hot aura hidden in the box, as if it could explode at any time. Everyone looked at the sandalwood box and started to discuss as they looked at it carefully. "Heavenly fire-colored glazed true gold? I've heard of this treasure before. It seems to be a top-notch gem that can only be found once in 1,000 years. Yes. This kind of rare gem can be used to forge and refine saint-level magic treasures. It's definitely a rare treasure. What are the people of the Heavenly Extreme Mountain doing with the heavenly flame-colored glazed true gold?" Bai Qing saw that everyone was interested and he couldn't help but smile. He stroked his beard and said, "Granny Long, this seat wants to give this piece of heaven fire-colored glass true gold as a gift to Luotian Mountain. This is the goodwill of the Heaven Extreme Mountain, and it also represents the intentions of the Heaven Extreme God Lord. I hope that Granny Long can kindly accept it." After saying that, Bai Qing beckoned to Meng Fei, who was behind her. Meng Fei immediately understood what he meant. He held the sandalwood box with both hands and walked in front of Granny Long, respectfully presenting it to her. All the god's disciples were stunned. Obviously, they did not expect this to happen. Ji Tianqing and Yunyao were also surprised and frowned. Granny Long also had the same doubts. She frowned on the spot and said with a serious face, "Guardian Bai, as the saying goes, one should not accept a reward without any effort. Our Luotian Mountain will not accept gifts casually. Moreover, this piece of heaven fire-colored glass true gold is a top-notch crafting material and a precious gem. Please take it back." However, Bai Qing shook her head and said with a smile, "Granny Long, this is a sincere gift from the Tianju Mountain. Please accept it." Granny Long saw that he insisted on giving the gift and guessed his intention. She couldn't help but smile and ask, "Guardian Bai, I'm afraid that you didn't come all the way to Luotian Mountain just to give the gift, right? There are other things, please tell me clearly. Otherwise, I won't accept it." This Bai Qing was a little embarrassed. After hesitating for a moment, he said with a smile, as expected, "Nothing can be hidden from Granny Long's sharp eyes." "Then I'll say it directly. This piece of heaven-fire-colored glass true gold is indeed a gift from the Heaven Extreme Mountain to Luotian Mountain. However, we have a presumptuous request. We hope that Luotian Mountain can help us." Hearing this, Granny Long, Ji Tianqing and the others all had the same thought. As expected. Bai Qing has long planned this. One who is unaccountably solicitous is hiding evil intentions. This Bai Qing won't be easy to deal with. Granny Long looked at Bai Qing calmly and asked, "How does the Heaven Extreme Mountain need help?" "Very simple." Bai Qing smiled and said in a relaxed tone, "I've long heard that 1,000 years ago, God Lord Luotian had personally crafted a divine tool called reverse water. That divine tool contains the ultimate power of ice and water. It can extinguish 9 heavens' true fire and compete with the sun and moon. Therefore, the Heaven Extreme Mountain wants to borrow this divine tool from your country to suppress the boundless sea of fire in Flame Mountain and deal with the glass fire dragon." Before Bai Qing could finish her words, Granny Long's expression changed and she frowned. "Protector Bai, after God Lord Luotian crafted the reverse water sword, he has never used it in front of anyone. How does your country know about it so clearly?" "It seems that Protector Bai has done his homework before coming." Bai Qing saw Granny Long's attitude and said, "Granny Long must be joking. God Lord Luotian is famous throughout the world, and the reverse water sword that he personally crafted is even more well known. Granny Long, please be at ease. The Heaven Extreme Mountain only wants to borrow the reverse water sword. After we attack Flame Mountain and capture the glass fire dragon, we will definitely return the reverse water sword and also give you a great reward." Before he could finish, Granny Long waved her hand and said, "There's no need to mention a great reward. The reverse water sword is a divine tool that the God Lord always carries with him. He will not easily show it to others, much less lend it to others. Furthermore, this old woman cannot make the decision. Please take back the gift." Meng Fei had been holding the treasure box in front of Granny Long, unable to advance or retreat. Seeing Granny Long refuse, he turned to look at Bai Qing. Bai Qing also frowned and said unhappily, "Granny Long, our Heaven Extreme Divine Nation has always been on good terms with your country. We can be considered old friends. Even if there are disputes on the border between our two countries and some medicine mountains and mineral veins, we have always followed the principle of peace and negotiated with your country. But now that we have a problem and want to borrow a magic treasure from your country, you simply refused. Isn't that a bit too unreasonable? It's fine if you don't accept the gift, but you should ask God Lord Luotian about borrowing the reverse water sword." Granny Long also frowned and looked at him. She said in a serious tone, "Protector Bai, what do you mean?" Chapter 1740. Granny Long's tone was low and cold, with a hint of anger. Bai Qing did not care. He smiled and waved his hand. "Granny Long, you worry too much. Our Heaven's End holy nation is the head of the 3 holy nations, and we have always respected others. If people respect us, we will respect them tenfold. This is the principle of our nation. However, since your country is so heartless, I will definitely report this matter to God Lord Tianju without changing a single detail. As for what happens in the future, it's not something we can control." After he finished speaking, he leaned back on the wide chair and picked up the teacup to savor the tea. Even though he didn't say anything further, his expression was filled with a wisp of arrogance, and he seemed rather confident. Obviously, he knew that Granny Long would not dare to make a decision on her own, much less offend the Heaven's End holy nation. Meng Fei also held the sandalwood box with the heavenly fire glazed true gold and returned to Bai Qing's side calmly. Granny Long's eyes were gloomy. Her expression was cold as she pondered, weighing the pros and cons. Everyone was silent, and the hall fell into silence. Bai Qing put on an attitude that said, "I'm not afraid of you not knowing what's good for you." Meng Fei was also a little overbearing and secretly proud of himself. Especially when he saw the ugly expressions of the god's disciples in the hall, he was even more proud. Suddenly, his gaze fell on Ji Tianqing. His body stiffened, and the smile on his face disappeared. "You? Aren't you Ji Tianqing?" Meng Fei's pupils shrank, and his face was full of disbelief as he exclaimed. The silence in the hall was broken, and everyone turned to look at Meng Fei. Bai Qing, who was resting with his eyes closed, was also awakened by Meng Fei's words. He frowned in confusion. "What, Ji Tianqing? Meng Fei, don't talk nonsense." Bai Qing was waiting for Granny Long to submit. When he saw Meng Fei speak, he scolded him in a low voice. Meng Fei was too shocked and could not help but explain. "Second guardian, he is Ji Tianqing. The #1 genius with the most dazzling performance in the Holy Nation Exchange." "What?" Bai Qing came to a sudden realization, and suddenly revealed a face full of surprise. "But I heard that he's the #1 genius of the vast divine nation. Why would he be here?" "Disciple, doesn't know either." Meng Fei was startled for a moment. Then, he shook his head in confusion. When he came to his senses, he frowned at Ji Tianqing and asked, "Ji Tianqing, why are you here instead of in the vast divine kingdom? Could it be that you betrayed the vast god nation and joined the Luo River god nation for Yunyao?" Meng Fei's words angered all the disciples of God present, and they glared at him as if they had a common enemy. Ji Tianqing walked out of the crowd and stood in the middle of the hall. He looked at him with a cold smile and said, "Little brother, please think before you speak. Firstly, even Huang Qi has to call me senior brother Ji. What right do you have to call me by my name? Secondly, I left the vast divine kingdom to reunite with my wife Yunyao with the consent of the vast divine martial god and the Luo River martial god. This can't be considered a betrayal. Lastly, if you speak rudely again, I don't mind throwing you out." Meng Fei was stunned by this series of words. He stared at Ji Tianqing with his mouth agape. When he came to his senses, he was embarrassed and angry. He shouted angrily, "Ji Tianqing! I only asked a few questions out of concern. How dare you be so rude? Is this how you're raised? Is this how the Luo River god nation treats its guests?" "Huh." Ji Tianqing's lips curled into a cold smile. He said mockingly, "You don't deserve to talk to me about manners, and you don't deserve to talk about hospitality. This is because you're not a guest in my eyes." As he spoke, he waved his hand and a dazzling golden light turned into a giant palm that wrapped around Meng Fei. Before Meng Fei could react, he was caught by the golden palm and thrown to the entrance of the hall by Ji Tianqing. Swoosh! With a flash of golden light, Meng Fei was thrown out of the hall. He drew an arc in the air and crashed into the square outside the hall. The guards and maids in the square all stared at Meng Fei, dumbfounded. Meng Fei crawled up in a sorry state. When he saw the strange expressions and gazes of the crowd, he was so embarrassed that he wanted to kill someone. Originally, when he and Bai Qing came to visit the Luoshan mountain, it could be said that they were full of themselves and wanted to show off. However, not long after he entered the hall, he was thrown out of the hall by Ji Tianqing because he said 2 wrong words. This was simply too embarrassing. He had never been so humiliated in his life. Until now, he still didn't dare to believe that Ji Tianqing had the guts to attack him in public. Ji Tianqing was so arrogant. Wasn't he afraid of angering the Heaven-End God Nation and bringing disaster to the Luo River God Nation? For a moment, Meng Fei was stunned in the square, not knowing what to do. It was impossible to return to the hall. He couldn't afford to lose face. It was also unrealistic to leave just like that. Bai Qing was still in the hall, waiting to talk business with Granny Long, the great conference hall was still quiet. Everyone was shocked and looked at Ji Tianqing in disbelief. Granny Long and the god's disciples didn't expect Ji Tianqing to be so domineering and throw Meng Fei out of the hall. However, the god's disciples came back to their senses and applauded secretly. They felt that it was very satisfying. Bai Qing was also stunned for a moment before he came back to his senses. Originally, he was confident that he would win and take the initiative in the negotiation. He was determined to get the reverse water divine sword. However, he didn't expect Ji Tianqing to be so arrogant. He didn't play by the rules and humiliated Meng Fei in front of everyone. As a result, when Ji Tianqing attacked, Bai Qing didn't even react in time. He looked down on the people of Luoshui Holy Nation from the bottom of his heart. He thought that the people of Luoshui Holy Nation didn't have the guts to resist, let alone offend the Heaven Extinction Holy Nation. However, Ji Tianqing's actions gave him a loud slap in the face. Swoosh! Bai Qing couldn't sit still anymore. He stood up with a pale face and stared at Ji Tianqing angrily. Granny Long, is this how the Luoshui Holy Nation treats its guests? Does your nation not discipline such an arrogant and rude god's disciple? I'll remember how your god's disciple humiliated my god's disciple. Granny Long, if you don't give me a reasonable explanation, I won't let this matter go. The reason why Bai Qing was angry was that Meng Fei was thrown out of the hall, which made him lose face. However, the main reason was that he wanted to use this incident to put pressure on Granny Long. However, Granny Long looked up and said expressionlessly, "Guardian Bai, please calm down. The conflict between the two gods' disciples is a personal grudge between the younger generation. As elders, how can we lower ourselves to the same level as them? If the news gets out, we will be ridiculed by the world." Chapter 1741. Protector Bai's thoughts have nothing to do with me. Granny Long turned a blind eye to Bai Qing's anger and replied indifferently. Bai Qing became more and more furious. He felt that he had lost all his face and could not stay any longer. Granny Long, I came here with good intentions to offer you a gift and discuss the matter of borrowing the treasure. I did not expect you to have such an attitude. I will ask you one last time. Will you lend me the reverse water sword or not? Although Bai Qing was furious, he did not lose his head. He still looked at the big picture and thought about the reverse water sword. Granny Long shook her head and said calmly, "Protector Bai, I said just now that the reverse water sword is a divine weapon. How can it be lent to others so easily? I cannot make the decision. If your country is sincere, why don't you let martial god Tianju go to the Luoshui Divine Lord personally?" The meaning of these words was clear. She did not want to lend it to him. Bai Qing had nothing to say. He said with a cold expression, "Fine. Since your country is so unreasonable and does not care about the friendship between our countries, I have nothing to say. I will report today's matter to the Divine Lord in detail." Without waiting for him to finish, Granny Long said expressionlessly, "Take care, Protector Bai. My legs are inconvenient, so I won't see you off." You. Bai Qing was even more furious. She was so angry that she almost couldn't breathe. Granny Long was a martial saint expert. She was fine and welcoming the diplomatic group at the square. Now, she said that her legs were inconvenient. She did not want to see them off and did not even bother with the basic etiquette. Bai Qing was so humiliated that he almost vomited blood. He left with a belly full of anger. Under the strange gazes of the crowd, he left the main hall with an ashen face and came to the square. Meng Fei quickly came forward and asked with a gloomy expression, "Second Protector, what should we do next?" Before he could finish, Bai Qing shouted coldly, "Let's go." Then, Bai Qing took out a flying boat and quickly left Luoshan Mountain with Meng Fei and 2 black-armored guards. After a long time, Bai Qing and Meng Fei's anger gradually subsided and they calmed down. Meng Fei touched his robe and looked around. Suddenly, he thought of something and his expression changed. Oh no! Bai Qing sat across from him. Seeing his strange expression, she asked with a sullen face, Meng Fei? What's wrong? Second guardian, I. Meng Fei hesitated for a moment before he said with a heart full of apprehension, when I was thrown out of the main hall by Ji Tianqing just now, the treasure box was left in the main hall. What? Bai Qing's eyes widened in anger, and his anger exploded once again. You idiot! If you can't even guard a treasure box, what use do I have for you? Not only did we not manage to borrow the reverse water sword, we even left the heaven fire glazed true gold at the Luotian mountain. I'm so angry. Meng Fei shrank his neck after being scolded. After a while, he mustered up his courage and tried to say, Second protector, why don't we go back and get it? Bai Qing glared at him coldly and scolded, do you have a pig's brain? They had already flown so far, and now they were running back to get the treasure box. You can be shameless, but I can't afford to lose face like that. Meng Fei was scolded until he was speechless. He could only obediently shut his mouth and lower his head in a repentant posture. Bai Qing was silent for a moment before his anger subsided. He muttered in a cold voice, the Luotian divine nation is really getting more and more outrageous. They actually dare to openly go against my country. Since that's the case, then don't blame my country for being ruthless. We'll wait and see in the future. Meng Fei also secretly clenched his fists. He recalled Ji Tianqing's words in his mind, and his eyes flashed with a thick sense of hatred. Luotian Mountain, Conference Hall. Ever since Bai Qing and the others left, the originally silent hall immediately became lively. Yi Qingluo, Lu Xiaomeng, and Zhou Bin all gathered around Ji Tianqing's side, discussing excitedly. Eldest senior brother, that move of yours just now was simply too shocking. All of us were dumbfounded. Everyone has long disliked that Bai Qing and Meng Fei. They came to the Luotian mountain to show off their strength. Eldest senior brother is really ruthless. He threw that kid out in front of everyone. That's such a slap in the face. It's not just us who didn't expect this. That kid and Bai Qing definitely didn't expect eldest senior brother to be so decisive. He's so domineering. A few God's disciples were talking about what happened just now. They were all exultant, supporting and admiring Ji Tianqing. Ji Tianqing only smiled faintly and didn't say anything. At this moment, Granny Long walked into the hall and stood in front of everyone. Her face was a little solemn, and there was a worried look on her face. A few God's disciples immediately quietened down and kept silent. Before Granny Long could speak, Yunyao defended Ji Tianqing. Granny Long, you can't blame Tianqing for what happened just now. It was Meng Fei who spoke rudely first. Tianqing warned him. Obviously, Yunyao knew that today's negotiation had failed. She was worried that Granny Long would blame Ji Tianqing. However, before she could finish, Granny Long waved her hand and said, Yunyao, you don't have to defend Tianqing. I know very well that I don't mean to blame Tianqing. Everyone, don't worry. No matter how strong the Luoshui holy nation is, we will never punish our own disciples and people just to please an external enemy. After hearing Granny Long's words, Yunyao was relieved. The God's disciples also felt warm and proud. Ji Tianqing looked at Granny Long and analyzed seriously. Granny Long, the people from the Heaven Extinction Holy Nation came with ill intentions. They didn't take the Luoshui holy nation seriously from the beginning. Moreover, Bai Qing and Meng Fei were arrogant, which made people feel disgusted. The Heaven Extinction Holy Nation only sent Bai Qing and Meng Fei with a piece of heavenly flame glazed true gold. They want to borrow the reverse water divine sword? I have a feeling that this matter is not so simple. I'm afraid that the Heaven Extinction Holy Nation has other plans. Granny Long nodded in agreement and said seriously, that's right. Tianqing, your analysis is completely correct. It's just a piece of heavenly flame glazed true gold. Although it's a top-notch gem material, it can't be compared to the reverse water divine sword. I'm just worried that the Heaven Extinction Holy Nation's intention to borrow the reverse water divine sword is fake. Their real intention is to find an excuse to provoke a dispute between the two nations and snatch the resources and treasures. Previously, the North Underworld Mountain invaded the Holy Nation and caused chaos in the Holy Nation, killing the people. Now, the Heaven Extinction Holy Nation is here to provoke us. The Holy Nation is in a state of internal and external troubles. I'm afraid that a storm is coming. At this moment, Lu Xiaoming suddenly realized something and exclaimed. Bai Qing, that old man, didn't take the treasure box away? Everyone turned to look at her and saw that she was picking up a sandalwood treasure box from the ground. The treasure box contained the heavenly flame glazed true gold. Lu Xiaoming held the sandalwood treasure box with both hands and presented it to Granny Long. Granny Long thought for a while and waved her hand. Tianqing, ever since you came to the Luotian Mountain, I haven't rewarded you with any resources or treasures. Chapter 1742. The heavenly flame glazed true gold was a top-notch crafting material that could be used to craft sacred-level magic treasures. Even to the Luotian Mountain, it was a rare treasure. However, the Luotian Mountain did not lack this material at the moment. Hence, Granny Long gave it to Ji Tianqing as a gift. Of course, Ji Tianqing wouldn't refuse. He accepted the gift as a matter of course. Thank you, Granny Long. It would be impolite of me to decline. As he spoke, he took the sandalwood box and put it into his space ring. At the same time, Burial of Heaven reminded him in his mind, I didn't expect the Heaven and God Nation to send a heavenly flame glazed true gold over. With the heavenly flame glazed true gold and the other three materials, I will be able to repair the sword. There was no doubt that Burial of Heaven had told Ji Tianqing about the materials needed to repair the sword a year ago. It was a pity that Ji Tianqing had been cultivating in seclusion for the past year and did not have the chance to explore and search for crafting materials. Hence, the matter of repairing the sword of Burial of Heaven had been put on hold again and again, and he had not collected the materials yet. When Bai Qing took out the heavenly flame glazed true gold, Burial of Heaven reminded Ji Tianqing again. Ji Tianqing was still thinking about how to get the heavenly flame glazed true gold. However, what happened later was beyond everyone's expectations. He did not expect to get the materials in such a way. At this time, Granny Long said to everyone, today's matter ends here. You can leave now. Also, everyone must keep this matter a secret. Do not spread it out. The god's disciples bowed and said, yes, before leaving the conference hall one after another. After a while, only Ji Tianqing, Yun Yao, and Granny Long were left in the meeting hall. When Ji Tianqing saw that everyone had left, he could not help but ask, Granny Long, is the flaming mountain and the glazed fire dragon that Bai Qing mentioned true? Granny Long nodded solemnly and said, that's true. The flaming mountain was located in the ruins of God. The ruins of God was the intersection of the three divine kingdoms and did not belong to any of them. As early as 10,000 years ago, the mountain of flames had always existed. It was extremely dangerous there. Regardless of whether one was a cross-calamity realm or a martial sage, one could lose his life if he barged into the flame mountain. However, the flaming mountain was vast, and there were endless mineral veins hidden underground. After being refined by the colored glass heavenly flame, those mineral veins have long become incomparably pure, and who knows how many precious gems and ores have been born. Hearing this, Ji Tianqing's eyes revealed a hint of anticipation. He had plans to repair the sword of Burial of Heaven, so he was particularly interested in ores. Granny Long frowned as she recalled, then continued, as for that glazed fire dragon, it appeared 3,000 years ago. At that time, a group of adventurers from the ruins of God did their best to capture the glazed fire dragon after discovering it. In the end, dozens of adventurers joined forces to besiege the glazed fire dragon, but they could not do anything to it. Instead, they were all killed. Since then, the glazed fire dragon had disappeared. Many powerhouses rushed to search for it, but they could not find it. Until 2,000 years ago, the glazed fire dragon appeared again. Many of the Empire's forces and adventurer team's experts heard the news and rushed to capture it. However, the glazed fire dragon killed countless powerhouses and successfully escaped back to the Flaming Mountain. 1,000 years ago, the glazed fire dragon appeared again, and once again, it caused a bloodbath and then hid in the Flaming Mountain. After listening to Granny Long's narration, Ji Tianqing nodded slightly and said, "In that case, the glazed fire dragon's nest is the Flaming Mountain, and it appears once every 1,000 years?" "That's right." Granny Long nodded. Ji Tianqing frowned slightly as he pondered, then continued to ask, "The glazed fire dragon has appeared 3 times, and even though it was surrounded by countless powerhouses, it was not captured. In addition to the Flaming Mountain, it must be very powerful, right?" Granny Long thought for a moment and nodded. It is said that when the glazed fire dragon appeared 1,000 years ago, it had already passed the 8th tribulation. With its talent and aptitude, it must have passed the 9th tribulation and reached the martial sage realm by now. Ji Tianqing frowned. After a moment of silence, he asked again, "Granny Long, can the reverse water divine sword really suppress the Flaming Mountain and restrain the glazed fire dragon?" Granny Long did not hesitate and said in a firm tone, "Of course." Ji Tianqing raised his eyebrows and showed a touch of doubt. Then why didn't the Luoshui martial god take action to subdue the glazed fire dragon? Granny Long was stunned for a moment, then she shook her head and said with a smile, "Tianqing, water and fire are incompatible. No matter how noble the glazed fire dragon is, it is incompatible with the Divine Master's aura. The Divine Master will not like it." Ji Tianqing muttered in his heart, "The glazed fire dragon that all the experts in the world dream of, but the Luoshui martial god is indifferent because he doesn't like it. What a casual reason." Granny Long looked at him and asked in a low voice, "Tianqing, you are so concerned about the glazed fire dragon, don't tell me, you want to capture it?" Yunyao also saw the clues and guessed his thoughts. Ji Tianqing did not hide and nodded, "Granny Long, the people of the Heaven and Divine Nation want it but can't get it. We have the reverse water divine sword, why not give it a try? If we can capture the glazed fire dragon, the power of the Luoshui divine nation will be greatly improved." Granny Long smiled bitterly and shook her head, "Tianqing, countless experts have tried their best and failed to subdue the glazed fire dragon. This matter is not that simple." "Okay." Ji Tianqing nodded and said, "Then, even if we can't capture the glazed fire dragon, we can enter the blazing mountain and mine the underground ore veins and gems. It will be a great harvest." "This." Granny Long hesitated, frowning and thinking. Yunyao looked at Ji Tianqing and asked secretly, "Tianqing, why do you want to go to the blazing mountain so much? Are you interested in the glazed fire dragon? Or are you looking for ore veins and materials?" Others did not know, but Yunyao knew very well that Ji Tianqing had a black dragon and an unrepaired divine sword. She guessed that Ji Tianqing was not interested in the glazed fire dragon. It was more likely that he wanted to find ore veins and materials. Sure enough, Ji Tianqing replied, "I am preparing to repair the burial of Heaven's sword. Currently, I only have the heavenly flame glazed true gold. I am still missing a few ores and materials. I am going to the blazing mountain to try my luck. As for the glazed fire dragon, it would be best if we can capture it. Even if we can't, we won't lose anything." Yunyao nodded to show that she understood. Seeing that Granny Long was still considering, she said, "Granny Long, I agree with Tianqing's suggestion. The glazed fire dragon is an item without an owner, and the blazing mountain is also in the ruins of God. It is not under the jurisdiction of the three divine nations. We have the reverse water divine sword, so we can give it a try. Even if we can't capture the glazed fire dragon, we can get a lot of ore veins and gems. Chapter 1743. Yun Yao's words interrupted Grandma Long's train of thought. She came back to her senses and looked at Yun Yao with a complicated gaze. She sighed. Sigh. The flaming mountain is extremely dangerous. The glazed fire dragon is also a noble and powerful divine beast that cannot be tamed. Why do you want to take the risk? Yun Yao looked at Grandma Long with a firm gaze and said calmly, Grandma Long, we know what you said. We will be careful. Moreover, a martial artist's cultivation is like sailing against the current. If you don't advance, you will fall behind. Over the years, the two of us have gone through so many hardships and endured so many life and death crises. Because of this, we were able to grow so quickly and become the favored ones of the heavens. Grandma Long saw that Yun Yao's attitude was firm and her words were reasonable, so she temporarily relented. Fine, since you insist on going, this old one won't stop you. As for the water reverse divine sword, Yun Yao will follow me to the secret chamber and report to the divine master personally. There shouldn't be any problems. After all, the divine master has mentioned to me before that he has already planned to bestow the water reverse divine sword to you. However, your strength is not enough, and the time is not ripe, so this matter has been put on hold. Yun Yao and Ji Tianqing were startled when they heard the news. They were in disbelief. What? The divine master has already planned to bestow the water reverse divine sword to me? Yun Yao looked at Grandma Long in disbelief. Grandma Long nodded and said, yes. With the divine master's strength and means, there is basically no need for him to use the water reverse divine sword. You are the divine master's most valued disciple and the only divine lady. Of course, he will bestow the divine sword to you. Yun Yao came back to her senses and said with a gratified expression, if that's the case, then it will be easy. Grandma Long, let's go to the secret chamber and report to the divine master. Grandma Long couldn't help but smile bitterly when she saw how scheming she was. Sigh. You are usually calm and wise, but when it comes to Tianqing, you can't keep your cool. Yun Yao just smiled faintly and didn't say anything. After that, Granny Long left the main hall with Yun Yao and went to the secret chamber. Ji Tianqing also left the meeting hall and returned to Cloudwater Palace. While waiting for Yun Yao to return, he took out the sandalwood box from his spatial ring. He placed the sandalwood box on the table and slowly opened it. Shwa! A dazzling red light immediately blossomed from the treasure box, illuminating the entire room with a red glow. Ji Tianqing looked down and saw a fist-sized fiery red crystal lying quietly in the box. This crystal was oval in shape, and its surface was very smooth, like a cobblestone. Upon closer inspection, one would discover that the surface of the gem was dark red, as if it was wrapped in a layer of flowing fire. But in reality, the inside of the gem was dark gold, and it emitted an incomparably violent and blazing aura. Ji Tianqing stared at the gem and observed it for a while, then murmured in a low voice, "It is indeed a pure and flawless heavenly flame true gold. If I want to repair the sword of burial of heaven, I need to gather 4 top-notch materials. Now that I have the heavenly flame true gold, I only need the wind thunder meteorite iron, the yin-yang divine jade, and the golden crow copper marrow." Thinking of this, he closed his eyes and began to meditate, and his primordial spirit entered Kenshin's tomb. Then, his primordial spirit entered the divine weapon pavilion through the second tombstone. In the huge divine weapon pavilion, there was a huge heavenly cauldron in the middle of the main hall, exuding an ancient and mysterious aura. There were more than 360 secret compartments carved into the walls of the main hall, and more than 300 kinds of refining materials were stored inside. Each of the refining materials was a rare top-notch treasure, and their value was no less than that of the heavenly flame true gold. There were even many ores and gems that were more valuable than the heavenly flame true gold. Ji Tianqing opened the secret compartments one by one, and checked the treasures stored inside to find the materials he needed. After a full 2 hours, he had checked more than 300 secret compartments, and only found the yin-yang divine jade. As for the wind-thunder meteorite iron and the golden crow copper marrow, the divine weapon pavilion did not have them. Ji Tianqing took the yin-yang divine jade and left the divine weapon pavilion. Swoosh! After his primordial spirit returned to its original position, he put the yin-yang divine jade and the heavenly flame true gold into the space ring. Now that I have 2 sets of materials, if I can find the other 2 in the flaming mountain, it will be a success. Ji Tianqing muttered to himself, I wonder what grade the burial of heaven will be restored to after I gather those 4 materials and repair the sword body. The voice of the burial of heaven immediately rang in his mind. Those 4 sets of materials are top-notch treasures, and can be used to refine saint-level Dharma treasures. Ji Tianqing immediately understood what it meant, and asked in disbelief, Burial of heaven, do you mean that after I repair the sword body for you, you can be restored to saint level? Of course. The burial of heaven answered without hesitation. Ji Tianqing's eyes flashed, and his heart started to beat faster. That's great. If it can really be restored to saint level and become a complete holy sword, its power will definitely increase by dozens of times. At that time, even if I encounter a powerhouse at the 5th or 6th level of the crossing calamity realm, I will be able to defeat him. Not long after, Yunyao returned to the room. Ji Tianqing suppressed the distracting thoughts in his heart, looked at her with concern, and asked, Yao Yao, how is it? Did the Luoshui martial god agree? Yunyao smiled and nodded. Granny Long reported the ins and outs of the matter to the Divine Master. The Divine Master was also quite displeased that the Heaven Absolute Divine Kingdom wanted to borrow the Reverse Water Divine Sword. However, the North Underworld Mountain and the Heaven Absolute Divine Kingdom attacked at the same time, and the Divine Kingdom was attacked from both sides. After I explained the situation to the Divine Master, the Divine Master has agreed to give me the Reverse Water Divine Sword in advance. Hearing this, Ji Tianqing showed a gratified smile and nodded, that's good. With the Reverse Water Divine Sword, we can enter the Mountain of Flames. Yunyao hesitated for a moment and then said, Granny Long will leave tomorrow and go to the Divine Kingdom to get the Reverse Water Divine Sword. She will come back in about 10 days. It just so happens that my heavenly tribulation is coming soon. It will come in about half a month. When I get the Reverse Water Divine Sword, I will definitely have more confidence to pass the heavenly tribulation. Ji Tianqing's body shook immediately, and his eyes were filled with disbelief and a touch of worry. Yao Yao, you are going to pass the heavenly tribulation in half a month? Why didn't you say such an important thing earlier? Yunyao shook her head gently and comforted in a soft voice, Tianqing, you don't have to worry about me. It's only the first heavenly tribulation, and it shouldn't be too powerful. Even without the Reverse Water Divine Sword, I am confident that I can pass it. Ji Tianqing thought for a moment and nodded, that's true. With your strength and aptitude, passing the first heavenly tribulation will be easy. In that case, we will wait patiently for Granny Long to come back with the Divine Sword. After you pass the heavenly tribulation, we will go to the Mountain of Flames in the Divine Ruins. Chapter 1744. Unknowingly, 10 days had passed. Ji Tianqing and Yunyao were cultivating in seclusion in their respective chambers. In order to face the impending heavenly tribulation, Yunyao cultivated without any distractions. She tried her best to raise her strength and strengthen her martial foundation. No matter what, she had to do her best to face the heavenly tribulation. She could not afford any mistakes or accidents. 10 days of cultivation had indeed raised her strength significantly. Her martial foundation had become more solid. However, she had already reached the peak of the essence soul realm. Even if her strength had increased, it was limited. The date of the heavenly tribulation was approaching. She felt a heavy pressure on her heart. The feeling in her heart was becoming clearer and clearer. Her heavenly tribulation would descend in 6 days. Ji Tianqing cultivated in seclusion for 10 days. His strength was still at the peak of the essence soul realm. However, his sword intent had become more condensed and had formed a basic embryonic form. It was tenacious and indomitable, looking down on the world. This was his sword intent. It represented his will and sword Tao beliefs. The increase in sword intent would not increase his strength, but it would make his sword Tao more powerful and outstanding. He was looking forward to seeing how powerful his sword Tao would be when he completely comprehended sword intent. As for his heavenly tribulation, he still could not sense the aura of the heavenly tribulation. He did not know when it would arrive. In any case, he had already grasped the power of the divine lightning. He did not take the heavenly tribulation to heart. He did not feel that it would be much of a threat. That evening, Granny Long finally returned to Luotian Mountain. After she returned to her residence, she rested for a moment before sending a maidservant to Cloud Water Palace. Yunyao had been waiting for news in Cloud Water Palace. When she heard that Granny Long had returned, she hurriedly rushed to meet her. The two met in Granny Long's study. Yunyao bowed to her and asked with concern, "Granny, did your trip to the Divine Kingdom go smoothly?" Granny Long smiled and nodded. "Everything went smoothly. I have also brought back the water reversal divine sword that the Divine Lord bestowed upon you." As she spoke, she took out a treasured sword from her interspatial ring. It was a 3-foot-long divine sword. It was stored in a silver-white sword case. Its design was exquisite and beautiful. The surface of the scabbard was engraved with exquisite patterns and complicated formation runes. It was obvious that there was a seal on it. The sword sheath was suffused with a silver light, like the radiance of the stars in the night sky, emitting a divine aura. Yunyao stared at the sword box with burning eyes. She slowly stretched out her hands and held the sword box in her hands, carefully observing it. The divine sword was light in his hand and gave him a cool feeling. The silver-white sword hilt was engraved with complicated patterns, and it glowed with a faint ice-blue brilliance. Yunyao only felt a strong, icy aura coming from the sword hilt and entering her body through her palm. However, that powerful icy aura did not make her feel uncomfortable. Instead, it gave her a feeling of communication. It felt as if the divine sword had become one with her arm, and she could control it with her will. Clang! She held the scabbard in her left hand and the hilt in her right hand. She pulled out the sword with a little force. Suddenly, a 3-foot-long ice-blue sword blade appeared in front of her eyes. The blade of the sword was as wide as 2 fingers. Its entire body was ice blue, as if it was made of crystal, sparkling and translucent, spotless. A layer of dense, ice-blue brilliance flowed on the surface of the sword blade, making the divine sword look very mysterious. She could clearly feel that there was a power that could destroy heaven and earth hidden in the divine sword. It was just that it was holding back. Once she swung the sword, she could easily split open the Luotian mountain and destroy everything within a few hundred miles. This was the power of the divine sword. Yunyao stared at the divine sword without blinking. She was a little excited and muttered softly, as expected of the reverse water divine sword refined by the divine master. It is really a rare divine weapon in the world. Granny Long looked at her kindly and reminded her, "Yunyao, other than this reverse water divine sword, the divine master also imparted a set of sacrificial and sword control techniques. They are all improved for you. I will impart the techniques to you later. Try to refine the divine sword in the next few days." Only after you refine the divine sword will it truly belong to you. It will be connected to your mind and you will be able to use it like your own arm. Only then will you be able to unleash more power. Yunyao nodded and put the sword back into its sheath. She cupped her hands and said, "Granny, please impart the techniques to me." Granny Long silently channeled her energy for a moment. Then, a ball of dense white light flew out from her forehead. The egg-sized ball of white light contained complicated seal words and symbols. It was shining brightly. Granny Long pointed with her right hand and the ball of light entered Yunyao's forehead. Suddenly, a huge amount of information flooded her mind. Her mind was bloated and her consciousness was a little blurry. After 10 breaths, she returned to normal. She bowed to Granny Long and said, "Granny, I will take my leave now. My heavenly tribulation will descend in 6 days." Granny Long nodded slightly and reminded her, "Then you must refine the divine sword in the next few days no matter what. 6 days later, you will undergo your tribulation on the solitary cloud peak in the back mountain." Yunyao nodded and left with the reverse water divine sword. After returning to the secret room in the cloud water palace, she did not care about anything else. She focused on cultivating and refining the divine sword. 6 days passed in the blink of an eye. Early in the morning, Yunyao was sitting cross-legged in the secret room. She was making hand seals with both hands. Her body was surging with boundless magic power and was emitting a dazzling light. In front of her, 2 feet above the ground, floated a divine sword that was completely ice blue in color. The divine sword was shining with a dazzling blue light and was emitting a vast and holy aura. An invisible connection was formed between her and the divine sword. It was as if they had become one. After a while, the sun rose from the east. The golden sun shone on the Luotian mountain. At the same time, the ice blue light on the divine sword disappeared. Yunyao also stopped. Clang! The divine sword returned to its scabbard. It turned into a wisp of icy light and disappeared into her body. Phew! She opened her eyes and exhaled a mouthful of turbid air. A gratified smile appeared in her eyes. Finally, the refinement is complete. She got up and left the secret room. Ji Tianqing was already waiting outside the secret room. When he saw Yunyao come out, he looked her up and down and smiled. "Looks like Yao Yao, you've already completed the refinement of the divine sword?" He could clearly sense that Yunyao's temperament had changed. There was a hint of holiness and coldness in her. At the same time, Yunyao's strength and aura had reached a critical point. Her body seemed to contain a power that could destroy the world and turn the universe upside down. Yunyao nodded and said, "It went well. Let's go." After saying that, the two left the Cloud Water Palace side by side and rushed to the back mountain of the Luotian mountain. The back mountain was very steep. Usually, no one went in or out. Especially the solitary cloud peak. It was isolated on the edge of the cliff. It was like a stone tablet standing on the peak of the mountain. White clouds and thick fog covered most of the solitary cloud peak. Chapter 1745. Under the morning sun, Lone Cloud Peak was covered with a layer of light gold. There was no grass on the platform at the top of the mountain. The ground was full of uneven rock layers. There were many cracks and pits on the ground, and there were scorched marks left by the lightning strikes. Apparently, the tribulation cultivators of Luotian Mountain often went through the heavenly tribulation on Lone Cloud Peak. When Ji Tianqing and Yunyao arrived at Lone Cloud Peak, Grandma Long was already there and had been waiting for them for a long time. Apart from Grandma Long, there were a few young disciples of God, a dozen deacons, and many guards. A few days ago, the news that Yunyao was going to go through the heavenly tribulation had spread on Luotian Mountain. As the first disciple of Luotian Mountain and the most honorable goddess, she had always been the center of attention. Now, she was the first disciple of God to go through the heavenly tribulation. Of course, everyone came to watch the show. Seeing Yunyao and Ji Tianqing, Grandma Long looked at them kindly and said in a serious tone, "Yunyao, this is your first heavenly tribulation. It's very important and you can't make any mistakes. I still need to tell you about the taboos and tricks of the heavenly tribulation in case there are any accidents. The heavenly tribulation is the supreme will of heaven. There are established rules and you can't go against them. When Yunyao goes through the heavenly tribulation later, she can only stand on Lone Cloud Peak alone. No one can go near her, let alone help her. When the heavenly tribulation starts, there will be a tribulation cloud that will cover the entire Lone Cloud Peak and suppress only Yunyao. If someone enters the tribulation cloud, the power of the heavenly tribulation will be doubled. If anyone helps Yunyao to resist the heavenly tribulation, the power of the heavenly tribulation will be doubled. By then, everyone will be annihilated." Ji Tianqing and Yunyao nodded to show that they understood. "Don't worry, Grandma Long. I won't interfere. Grandma Long, don't worry. I can handle the heavenly tribulation alone." Grandma Long nodded slightly and continued, "The heavenly tribulation of each person is different because of their talent. The heavenly tribulation of mediocre people usually only has 3 heavenly thunders. If they can resist the heavenly tribulation, they can pass it successfully. Those with outstanding aptitude would attract 4 to 6 bolts of heavenly lightning. Moreover, the heavenly lightning would also contain the power of other attributes. Peerless geniuses with extraordinary talent would attract more than 6 bolts of heavenly lightning. Furthermore, the heavenly lightning would mutate and possess strange and unpredictable powers. Yunyao, I'm worried that since your aptitude is too outstanding, the heavenly tribulation you attract will also be extraordinary." Regarding this point, Ji Tianqing and Yunyao had already learned about it and were well aware of it. "Granny, don't worry. I know what I'm doing, and I'm confident that I can deal with it." Yunyao looked at Granny Long with a firm gaze, her voice filled with confidence. Only then did Granny Long feel relieved. She nodded and said, "That's good. When you're ready, you can ascend Solitary Cloud Peak." After saying that, Granny Long led the gods' apprentices, deacons, and guards and flew up into the sky. Everyone stood in the sky 20 miles away from Solitary Cloud Peak, ready to watch Yunyao go through the heavenly tribulation. Ji Tianqing held Yunyao's hand and encouraged her with a smile, "Yao Yao, I believe that you'll definitely go through it smoothly. You won't let me down, and there won't be any accidents, right?" Yunyao nodded and said calmly, "Tianqing, wait for me here. I'll be back soon." After saying that, she turned around and flew up into the sky, landing on Solitary Cloud Peak with her clothes fluttering in the wind. Solitary Cloud Peak was surrounded by clouds and a strong wind was blowing. Yunyao stood on the peak of the mountain, her clothes and hair fluttering in the wind. Her entire body exuded an otherworldly immortal qi. She stood quietly on a huge rock and closed her eyes, slowly releasing the vast dermic powers in her body. Suddenly, a formless and vast aura shot up into the sky, straight into the sky. At this moment, she didn't hide or suppress her power anymore. She completely released it and showed her most powerful side. The majestic and violent power immediately shrouded the entire Solitary Cloud Peak. The surrounding sea of clouds and dense fog were immediately dispersed, and the fierce wind suddenly stopped. Then, thick gray clouds appeared in the sky, coming from all directions and gathering in the sky above Solitary Cloud Peak. After a short while, a cloud with a radius of 50 miles formed above Solitary Cloud Peak. It was like a huge whirlpool that spun rapidly. The golden sun was blocked, and the light in the sky became dim. A strong wind blew from the top of Solitary Cloud Peak and spread in all directions. A sacred and vast invisible power came down from the sky and shrouded the entire Solitary Cloud Peak. That was the invisible will of the heavenly Tao. Ji Tianqing, the god apprentices, and the guards all felt their hearts sink and they felt quite depressed. Even Granny Long and the deacons were in awe under the sacred and invisible will of the heavenly Tao. Yun Yao, who was on solitary Cloud Peak, was in the center of the storm and had to bear the most powerful suppression. Her expression turned serious as she stood proudly on top of the mountain. There was no fear on her face. Soon, the gray clouds in the sky shrunk to a radius of 20 miles and became as dark as ink. The clouds spun faster and faster, and electric arcs started to flash in the huge whirlpool. Granny Long murmured seriously, "The tribulation cloud has formed. The first heavenly thunder is coming." As expected. After a short while, the thousands of electric arcs in the tribulation cloud formed a sacred thunderbolt and struck down. Kaboom! With an earth-shattering sound, a 300-foot-long purple heavenly thunder as thick as a water tank struck down from the sky toward Yun Yao. Seeing this, Ji Tianqing, Granny Long, and the other gods' disciples felt their hearts in their mouths. They were all very worried. Yun Yao, who was on solitary Cloud Peak, was not afraid at all. She raised her head to look at the bolt of lightning, and a brilliant light flashed in her right hand, and a sparkling and translucent ice-blue sword appeared. It was the reverse water divine sword. She made a sword art with her left hand and held the divine sword with her right hand. She stabbed at the thunderbolt in the sky with all her strength. Swish! A 1,000-foot-long icy blue sword radiance appeared in the sky and collided with the heavenly thunder with an unstoppable force. Boom! There was an earth-shattering sound when the two collided. It spread across the entire Luotian mountain and shocked everyone within a few hundred miles. The heavenly thunder was destroyed by the sword radiance. It exploded into hundreds of purple electric arcs and scattered on solitary Cloud Peak. Boom! 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 The barren solitary Cloud Peak started to shake. Many cracks appeared on the ground and gravel splashed everywhere. Yun Yao stood on top of the millstone. Everything around her was safe and sound. She didn't see any lightning. After a while, the gravel and the lightning dissipated. Peace was restored on the peak of the mountain. She looked up at the sky calmly and waited for the second heavenly thunder to strike. In the sky 20 miles away, many gods' apprentices, deacons, and guards were dumbfounded by what they saw. Everyone had a horrified expression on their faces. They simply couldn't believe their own eyes. The sacred and violent heavenly thunder was destroyed by Yun Yao with one strike. Chapter 1746. The deacons, God's disciples, and the guards were not the only ones who were stunned. Even Granny Long's eyes narrowed in disbelief. She had seen others go through the heavenly tribulations at least 100 times over the past few hundred years. However, she had never seen anyone who was going through the heavenly tribulation so confidently. Not only did she face the heavenly lightning head-on, but she had also destroyed it with her sword. She was a martial sage and had gone through the heavenly tribulations before. Every time she went through the heavenly tribulations, it was a painful memory that she could not bear to recall. She knew how scary the heavenly tribulations were, and that was why she was worried about Yun Yao's safety. However, Yun Yao's performance had overturned her understanding of the heavenly tribulation and opened her eyes. It seems like, this is the power of a top genius and the divine sword. Granny Long looked at Yun Yao with shining eyes and murmured in amazement. At that moment, the second heavenly lightning was brewing in the calamity cloud vortex in the sky. Tens of thousands of purple lightning arcs gathered in the calamity cloud vortex and formed a pillar of purple lightning. It was 400 feet long and it struck down from the sky. The power of the second heavenly lightning was more than 2 times stronger than the first one. Kaboom! Thunder roared and the dazzling lightning tore through the sky and lit up the dark sky. It was so bright that people could not open their eyes. Granny Long and the rest of the people were nervous again as they looked at Yun Yao. They were worried for her. Ji Tianqing was the only one who looked at Yunyao calmly. He was not worried. After all, he knew Yunyao the best. The heavenly lightning pillar was like a huge Zidian dragon as it struck toward Yunyao. It was about to engulf her. However, she was fearless. Her body was as straight as a sword and her aura was as calm as water. All of a sudden, she moved. She formed a sword art with her left hand and drew dozens of arcs in front of her to form a mysterious word. She held the reverse water divine sword in her right hand and stabbed 9 times toward the sky. Swoosh! 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 9 rays of dazzling blue sword radiance shot out like lightning. They formed a 9 palaces formation and stabbed toward the heavenly lightning pillar. She did not block the heavenly lightning and chose to face it. This scene shocked Granny Long and everyone else. Their hearts almost stopped beating. Bang 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 bang. A third of an instant later, the 9 giant icy blue swords struck the bolt of heavenly lightning with boundless divine might. A series of heaven-shaking explosions erupted, resounding through the clouds and shaking the entire Luotian mountain. The 9 sword lights collapsed on the spot, shattering into billions of ice crystals that rained down like torrential rain. The mighty and violent heavenly thunder light pillar was also shattered. It split into thousands of purple electric arcs and scattered on the solitary cloud peak. The rocky ground, which was already in a mess, was suddenly filled with dense cracks. Hundreds of large pits appeared, and soil and stones burst out into the sky. A moment later, the smoke and dust in the sky dispersed. Only then did everyone see clearly that Yunyao was unscathed. There was nothing unusual within 100 feet of her. However, a layer of the entire mountain peak had been shaved off, and it had dropped by more than 10 feet. Fortunately, the heavenly lightning was destroyed by Yunyao. Otherwise, its power would be even more terrifying. Many of the god's disciples and guards were filled with shock. They had a clearer understanding of the terrifying power of the heavenly lightning. At the same time, everyone was amazed by Yunyao's power and techniques. Just 10 breaths later, the third bolt of heavenly lightning struck. The pitch-black whirlpool of tribulation cloud spat out a 500-foot-long Zidian that looked like a giant dragon. The power of this bolt of heavenly lightning was twice as powerful as before. Before the heavenly lightning struck, heaven and earth were already filled with violent destructive power. Everyone knew that as long as they did not step onto the solitary cloud peak, they would not be hit by the heavenly lightning. However, many people were intimidated by the heavenly lightning and could not help but back away from the solitary cloud peak to avoid being injured. Kaboom! An earth-shattering explosion sounded, and the heavenly lightning struck. Yunyao was still standing proudly in the wind. Her left hand formed a sword seal, and her right hand waved the divine sword. 24 sword lights danced in the wind. Bang 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 bang. Another dull explosion sounded, and the 24 sword lights were released. They were like a few ice flowers that appeared in the dark sky. It was extremely gorgeous. The heavenly thunder light pillar also shattered into tens of thousands of electric arcs, crackling and crackling as they scattered in the sky. Thousands of purple electric arcs and the ice flowers complemented each other, creating a different kind of gorgeous scene. At this moment, the crowd did not feel that the heavenly lightning was terrifying. They were all amazed by the rare beauty. The third bolt of heavenly lightning was also destroyed by Yunyao. Granny Long, many of the god's disciples, attendants, and guards were all excited and full of shock. Waves of exclamations and discussions could be heard from the crowd. This is unbelievable. Senior Yunyao actually destroyed 3 bolts of heavenly lightning in a row. This is simply shocking. In the past 1,000 years, who could accomplish such an amazing feat? After this news spreads, Senior Sister's name will definitely spread throughout the entire Shenwu continent. Although Senior Sister has the divine sword in her hand, how much power she can unleash depends on her talent and strength. It's already a miracle that she was able to destroy 3 bolts of heavenly lightning in a row. If it was an ordinary person, they would have succeeded in their tribulation after the 3 bolts of heavenly lightning. Yunyao is a peerless genius. Her tribulation is definitely different. How can there only be 3 bolts of heavenly lightning? Granny Long and the attendants had a new understanding of Yunyao's talent and strength. The god's disciples admired and envied Yunyao. They hoped that they could be like her, facing the tribulation head-on and destroying the heavenly lightning with their swords. Everyone was immersed in shock and amazement. Only Ji Tianqing's expression became serious. He stared at the tribulation cloud vortex with a tinge of worry in his eyes. He knew very well that the first 3 bolts of heavenly lightning would not be a threat to Yunyao. However, the following bolts of heavenly lightning would be much more powerful and unpredictable. Sure enough, thousands of golden, purple, and blue electric arcs appeared in the dark tribulation cloud vortex and quickly gathered together. In the blink of an eye, the 3 bolts of heavenly lightning of different colors gathered together to form a dazzling pillar of heavenly lightning. This pillar of heavenly lightning was different from the previous 3 bolts of heavenly lightning. Not only was it more than 600 feet long, but it also contained 3 different types of power. The purple heavenly lightning had the power to destroy heaven and earth. The golden heavenly lightning was the fiercest and could destroy all kinds of defenses. As for the blue heavenly lightning, it could penetrate the body and destroy the divine soul directly. Yunyao held the upstream sword in her hand and looked up at the heavenly lightning that was descending from the sky. A tinge of seriousness flashed past her eyes. The terrifying and invisible power pressed down on her like a huge mountain, causing her feet to sink into a millstone. It was almost impossible for her to move. However, she tried her best to hold on and maintain her proud posture. She refused to bend down and lower her head. She knew very well that the heavenly lightning could not be destroyed. She could only use all her strength to resist it. Hence, she held the upstream sword with both hands and raised it above her head. Then, she brandished the sword and shot out 36 rays of icy sword light. Chapter 1747. As Yunyao chanted an obscure incantation, her body also burst out with a soaring fighting spirit. 36 cold sword radiances formed a mysterious array and started to spin rapidly. Suddenly, the sword radiances formed a round plate and the cold light lit up the sky. The lone cloud peak and the surrounding area turned into a world of blue light. The 3-colored thunderbolt hit the ice-blue plate and made a deafening sound. The disc collapsed on the spot, exploding into millions of ice shards that shot out in all directions. Swish! 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 Countless ice shards flew across the sky like sword chi and shooting stars. At the same time, the tricolored thunderbolt also exploded, turning into multicolored thunderbolts and lightning. It was like a fairy scattering flowers. Yunyao successfully blocked the thunderbolt and wasn't hurt. However, the top of the lone cloud peak was shattered by the thunderbolts and turned into ruins. Dust, gravel, ice crystal fragments, and lightning arcs spread out like a huge wave. The expressions of the god's disciples, deacons, and guards changed as they stepped back in fear. However, they were too slow and couldn't dodge the impact. At the critical moment, Granny Long leisurely waved her palms, releasing a bright golden light. Swish! The golden light stretched across the sky, forming a tall wall over 10,000 feet in length, blocking the terrifying shockwaves. She had seen this kind of thing many times in the past few hundred years and could deal with it easily. Many of the god's disciples and guards were still in a state of shock. They all retreated to the sky 40 miles away. Soon, the 5th thunderbolt was formed in the tribulation cloud. There were 4 colors in this thunderbolt and it contained the power of 4 different elements. Its power was even more terrifying. Boom! Crack! A deafening explosion rang out as a 70-meter-long pillar of lightning ferociously struck towards Yunyao with a dazzling light. The terrifying power made it difficult for her to breathe and her body was a bit bent. However, she channeled the longevity divine power in her body and struck out with her left palm in a mysterious trajectory. She executed a defensive mystic art and formed a dark green barrier around her. She waved the water-reversing divine sword with her right hand and shot out dozens of icy blue sword radiances. They formed an icy blue dragon and attacked the thunderbolt. Bam! The icy blue dragon collided with the heavenly thunderbolt and there was a loud sound. The giant dragon instantly collapsed, exploding into countless fragments that splashed across the sky. The heavenly thunderbolt wasn't destroyed, but its power was reduced by a bit before it hit the dark green light shield. Boom! Crack! The dark green light shield and the thunderbolt collapsed at the same time and turned into pieces and thunderbolts that scattered in the sky. The fifth thunderbolt was neutralized by Yunyao again. The process was scary but not dangerous, and the effect was also quite brilliant. The onlookers were shocked and they became more and more excited. Yunyao didn't look relaxed and she didn't even have time to look at the onlookers' reactions. She forgot everything and focused on dealing with the heavenly tribulation. Not long after, the sixth bolt of lightning struck again. This thunderbolt was 800 feet long and formed by 5 colored thunderbolts. Its power was extremely terrifying. Before the thunderbolt struck, the entire Lonely Cloud Peak trembled from the suppression. The area within 20 miles became a vacuum. Yunyao bent over and her face became paler. Her legs were also stuck in the millstone and she couldn't move. However, she activated her Dharma power and used a secret technique to resist the thunderbolt. 3,000 weak water. She let out a low cry and formed a hand seal with both hands. She struck out dozens of hand seals as fast as lightning. She had used one of her trump cards. This was a secret technique that Luoshui martial god had modified for her. It was used with the water-reversing divine sword and could maximize the power of the sword. She had just mastered it 2 days ago and this was the first time she used it. Swoosh! The water-reversing divine sword flew into the sky and instantly expanded to 1,000 feet long, turning into an icy blue giant sword. Under Yunyao's control, the divine sword spun at an extremely fast speed, spraying out an overwhelming amount of icy blue water light. An icy blue light shield with a radius of 1,000 feet was immediately formed and enveloped Yunyao within it. Kaboom! The 5-colored thunderbolts struck the icy blue light shield and made a deafening sound. The thunderbolt pillar collapsed and turned into 5-colored thunderbolts. They scattered in the sky like a huge electric net. The icy blue light shield also shook violently and cracks appeared. It was on the verge of collapse. The light shield was damaged and Yunyao also suffered a backlash. Her face turned pale and she spat out a mouthful of blood. Pfft, she couldn't help but bend over and cover her chest with her hands. Blood kept dripping from the corner of her mouth. Seeing this scene, everyone cried out in alarm and revealed worried expressions. Ji Tianqing's expression was solemn as well. His eyes were filled with worry. However, he didn't say anything. He didn't want to distract Yunyao. Grandma Long looked at Yunyao. While she was worried, she also felt gratified. Although Yunyao is injured, she successfully blocked the 6th thunderbolt. She should be able to survive this heavenly tribulation. Others might not know, but she knew very well that a cultivator who could attract 6 thunderbolts was already an outstanding genius. With Yunyao's talent, the 7th thunderbolt was bound to strike. Yunyao could block 6 thunderbolts and could block the 7th. At most, she would be severely injured. If it were an ordinary cultivator, they would be severely injured and close to death after enduring 6 thunderbolts. At this moment, the tribulation cloud vortex in the sky spun faster and changed. Inside the pitch-black vortex, crimson heavenly fire and golden astral winds appeared. The heavenly flames, wind, and five-colored thunderbolts combined to form a dazzling five-colored thunderbolt pillar hundreds of feet long. Grandma Long's face turned serious when she saw this. She clenched her fists in her sleeves. Yunyao's seventh thunderbolt contains both heavenly flames and wind. Her talent is indeed rare. She's a peerless genius that only appears once in 1,000 years. Everyone also realized that the seventh thunderbolt's power would be unprecedentedly terrifying. Their hearts were in their throats. On Solitary Cloud Peak, Yunyao knelt on the ground with one knee under the terrifying suppressive force. She held the reverse water sword with both hands and stood up stubbornly. She looked up at the sky. When the thunderbolt came crashing down, she gritted her teeth and activated her eternal life divine power. She waved the reverse water sword and used her most powerful technique. Heavenly Water Sword, separate the world. Her voice was sonorous as she shouted. Next, the divine longevity light shot out from her left palm to form a dark cyan umbrella to protect her. She used her right hand to control the reverse water sword and slashed out a giant icy blue sword that was thousands of feet long. The sword radiance suddenly appeared, standing between the sky and the earth. With an unparalleled momentum, it slashed at the 1,000-foot-long heavenly lightning. Chapter 1748. When Yunyao swung her sword, everyone was shocked. They couldn't believe that she had cut open the sky with her sword and created a crack in the void. The sky above Solitary Cloud Peak was really split into two halves by her sword, separating it into two worlds. She had cut off the world with her sword. How terrifying! Only a martial saint would be able to unleash such terrifying power. In the next moment, the giant sword hit the heavenly lightning. Bam! There was a loud explosion and the sound shook the world. The 100-meter-long heavenly thunder was shattered into thousands of five-colored shards, sprinkling down the heavenly fire that covered the sky and earth. However, even though the heavenly lightning was smashed, the golden wind still carried the heavenly fire and the five-colored lightning toward Yunyao. Boom! 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 The dark green umbrella was hit by thousands of attacks and made a series of explosions. Although the longevity divine light was powerful, it couldn't withstand such terrifying heavenly might. After 2 breaths, the dark green umbrella was smashed into pieces. The strong wind, the heavenly fire and the five-colored lightning immediately engulfed Yunyao and the entire Solitary Cloud Peak. Seeing this, Granny Long, Ji Tianqing and everyone else opened their eyes wide and their hearts stopped beating. Everyone was silent. After a moment of silence, they came back to their senses and shouted in surprise and worry. Oh my God! Senior sister, she couldn't block it? Impossible! Senior sister blocked the 6 heavenly lightning easily. How could she not block the 7th one? Oh no! Senior sister will be seriously injured even if she doesn't die. What a terrifying heavenly tribulation. If it were any of us, we would have been smashed into ashes. All the gods' disciples and guards were filled with terror. They were extremely fearful of the heavenly tribulation. Yao Yao. Ji Tianqing's eyes were about to pop out of their sockets, and his fists were clenched so tightly that creaking sounds could be heard. He subconsciously rushed out, wanting to rush up to Solitary Cloud Peak and save Yunyao himself. However, when he was about to rush out, his shoulder was grabbed by an old hand. An unparalleled power came, firmly holding him in place, making him unable to move. He turned his head and saw that it was Granny Long. Granny Long looked at him solemnly, shook her head and said in a deep voice, "Tianqing, don't be impulsive. We have to believe in Yunyao." Ji Tianqing was stunned for a moment before he calmed down and suppressed the anxiety and worry in his heart. After all, if he rushed up Solitary Cloud Peak, not only would he not be able to help Yunyao, but he would also anger the will of the heavenly Tao and send down a punishment that could destroy the world. He stood where he was, gazing at the chaotic solitary cloud peak, praying silently in his heart. Around 10 breaths later, the lightning, fire, and wind gradually dissipated. The smoke and dust on solitary cloud peak gradually dissipated. Only then did everyone clearly see that the peak of solitary cloud peak had been shaved off by several tens of feet. The ground was covered with huge gullies and pits, and countless charred stones were scattered everywhere. Yun Yao, dressed in a white dress, was kneeling in the ruins with one hand on the ground and the other on the reverse water sword. There was a dark red bloodstain on her pure white dress. Her long hair was messily draped over her shoulders, covering her cheeks. Blood kept dripping from the corner of her mouth, falling on the charred stones. Seeing that Yun Yao was not killed by the lightning and her body was intact, everyone was finally relieved. That's great. Eldest senior sister really blocked that bolt of heavenly lightning. I knew it. How could she fail? Huh. Eldest senior sister has successfully passed the tribulation. She will soon break through the tribulation stage and become a new martial lord. She is indeed a top genius, the Divine Master's most valued goddess. She deserves the title. Today's tribulation is rarely seen even in hundreds of years. It is really a blessing for us to be able to witness it with our own eyes. Many God's disciples and guards cheered with joy. They were excited for Yun Yao. Even Ji Tianqing heaved a sigh of relief. The heavy stone in his heart was finally lifted. However, no one noticed. Yun Yao was half kneeling on the ground. There was no expression of pain on her face. Instead, there was confusion between her eyebrows. She closed her eyes and silently checked the situation in her body, as if she was trying to solve some mystery. Just a moment ago, the heavenly wind, heavenly fire, and lightning drowned her like a flood. She was prepared to be seriously injured. After she was injured, she would use the immortal divine power to heal her injuries. However, she did not expect that after the violent heavenly fire, heavenly wind, and lightning hit her, they would be completely devoured by something or some kind of power in her body. Most of the power of the lightning was neutralized by the mysterious thing. She was only slightly injured. She still had about 70% of her strength. Strange. What kind of power can devour the lightning, heavenly fire, and heavenly wind? Could it be the immortal divine pearl? Yun Yao checked for a while but could not find the reason. She thought it was the effect of the immortal divine power. At this moment, among the crowd of onlookers, there was a sudden exclamation full of doubt. Didn't eldest senior sister pass the tribulation? Why hasn't the tribulation cloud dissipated yet? The sudden exclamation made the excited crowd calm down immediately. They all looked up at the sky. They saw that the whirlpool in the tribulation cloud did not dissipate. Instead, it became bigger. The dark tribulation cloud was dyed with a layer of strange blood red. The lightning flashing in the whirlpool was also covered with a layer of blood red. This scene made Granny Long, Ji Tianqing, and the others worried and anxious. Damn it! Is there an eighth lightning bolt? Ji Tianqing cursed worriedly. Granny Long's pupils contracted. She was worried and surprised at the same time. Yun Yao attracted the eighth lightning bolt. It has been 800 years since someone with such talent appeared. No wonder the Divine Master treats Yun Yao as his own daughter. With Yun Yao's talent, she will definitely become an Einherjar in the future as long as she doesn't die prematurely. However, the more talented she is, the more powerful the lightning bolts are. The deacons and disciples of God were shocked by Granny Long's words. Only now did everyone understand what kind of valiant degree Yun Yao's talent and aptitude had reached. However, when they heard Granny Long's last sentence, they were worried about Yun Yao again. Ji Tianqing looked up at the blood-red tribulation cloud and the lightning. He frowned and asked in a low voice, "Granny Long, you are very knowledgeable and experienced. Can you tell what kind of lightning this is?" Granny Long stared at the tribulation cloud and observed it for a while. She shook her head helplessly and said, "I have seen more than 100 heavenly tribulations. I know them very well. However, I can't see through Yun Yao's heavenly tribulation. She is not an ordinary person. I am afraid that the 8th lightning bolt she attracted is a mutated lightning tribulation." "What? A mutated lightning tribulation?" Ji Tianqing frowned even harder. Granny Long nodded slightly and explained in a low voice, "The mutated lightning tribulation only exists in legends. I have never seen it with my own eyes." Chapter 1749. What? The heavens arranged this for her? Ji Tianqing was dumbfounded. He could not believe it. If someone else had said this, he would have thought it was ridiculous. However, since it came from Granny Long, he had to believe it. Why would the heavens arrange such a strange lightning tribulation for Yao Yao? He furrowed his brows and muttered to himself. Suddenly, he thought of Yun Yao's identity and guessed something. Is it because Yao Yao is the reincarnation of goddess Yaoguang? Is that why she has to face such a tribulation? This was just his guess. He could not confirm it yet. At this moment, the 8th lightning tribulation had formed in the tribulation cloud vortex. It was a lightning tribulation that was hundreds of feet long. It looked like a blood-red dragon, and it fell from the sky toward Yun Yao. Boom! Crack! A deafening boom shook the heavens, shaking the entire Luotian mountain. Many of the god's disciples and guards turned pale from the shock and felt dizzy. Granny Long and Ji Tianqing were not affected at all. They stared at Yun Yao. Yun Yao had already used her longevity divine power to heal her injuries. She stood on the peak of the mountain. She used the longevity divine light with her left hand and the water reversal divine sword with her right hand. She was going to use her trump card, however, a scene that shocked everyone appeared. Before Yun Yao could use her trump card, the blood-red lightning tribulation struck her at an unbelievable speed and drowned her. Boom! There was a deafening sound. Yun Yao was covered by the blood-red lightning tribulation. She could not be seen at all. The lone cloud peak shook violently. However, it did not collapse. There was no dust or gravel. The blood-red lightning tribulation disappeared in the blink of an eye. No! It did not disappear. It went into Yun Yao's body. Yun Yao was still in the posture of wielding her sword and casting spells. However, she was rooted to the ground like a stone statue. She did not move at all. Such a bizarre scene left everyone dumbfounded. Not only the god's disciples, deacons, and guards, but even Grandma Long was staring at Yun Yao with her eyes wide open. Ji Tianqing also showed a puzzled expression and frowned doubtfully. He stared at Yun Yao, observing her condition and sensing her aura. Fortunately, Yun Yao was not injured, and her life force and magic power aura were normal. Other than being rooted to the ground like a wooden puppet, she didn't seem to be affected at all. Everyone was stunned for a moment, and then a burst of discussion broke out. How could this be? Why isn't she moving? Shouldn't the 8th bolt of heavenly lightning destroy the world? How come it didn't even break a single stone? This is too strange. That bolt of heavenly lightning just now was extremely terrifying. I even thought that the solitary cloud summit had been destroyed. I think there's something strange about this heavenly lightning. I'm afraid Yun Yao won't be able to neutralize it so easily. That's right. The 8th heavenly lightning should be the final test of the heavenly tribulation. It can't be weaker than the 7th heavenly lightning. Everyone was whispering to each other. There were many different opinions, but no one could figure out what was wrong. Grandma Long frowned and pondered for a long time. Suddenly, she thought of something, and her eyes lit up. I understand now. This is not an ordinary heavenly tribulation. This is the inner demon tribulation of the mutated heavenly tribulation. Ji Tianqing had been pondering the whole time, but when he heard Granny Long's words, a look of realization appeared on his face. Inner demon tribulation. Yes, Yao Yao's situation is very similar to the legendary inner demon tribulation. Grandma Long looked at him in surprise. Tianqing, you've heard of the inner demon tribulation too? Yes. Ji Tianqing nodded and explained, the inner demon tribulation only exists in legends. It is said that it's a test given by the heavens to extraordinary talents. Heaven-defying geniuses could ignore all obstacles and advance at a terrifying speed. Nothing could stop them. The only opponent for such talents is themselves. Or rather, their inner demons. Only by defeating their own inner demons can they be called extraordinary talents. When Ji Tianqing explained the inner demon tribulation, the sky was quiet, and everyone listened attentively. After he finished, Grandma Long quickly nodded in agreement. That's right. Tianqing's explanation is completely correct. Therefore, the inner demon tribulation is the most powerful, most terrifying, and most unpredictable. No external force can defeat it, and no one can help Yunyao. Only by relying on her own willpower and spirit can she defeat the inner demon tribulation. Ji Tianqing added in a low voice with a solemn expression. If Yunyao fails to pass the tribulation, her divine soul will be destroyed by the inner demon tribulation. Even if her physical body survives, it is equivalent to death. If she can successfully pass the inner demon tribulation, she will be reborn. She will spread her wings and soar into the sky. No power can stop her from rising. After he finished speaking, he looked at Guyun Peak with a burning gaze and fixed his gaze on Yunyao. Yao Yao, nothing must happen to you. No matter what, you must pass this tribulation. He secretly clenched his fists and shouted silently in his heart. At the same time, Yunyao, who had been motionless, could finally move. She closed her eyes as if she had lost consciousness. She staggered and ran, waving the reverse water divine sword wildly and stabbing at the sky. Although she was as fast as lightning, she kept circling around Gu Yunfeng and never left the mountain peak. Sometimes she waved her palm to cast spells, sometimes she waved her sword to kill. Not long after, she muttered something and shouted in grief and indignation. No. Don't even think about it. Even if I die, I will never give in. Even if the sun and moon are destroyed, and heaven and earth no longer exist, my heart will still be there. At first glance, she looked like she had lost her mind and gone crazy. But everyone knew that this was not her intention. She was resisting the most dangerous and rare inner demon tribulation. Ji Tianqing and Grandma Long were extremely worried when they saw Yunyao's disheveled hair and uncontrollable emotions. Fortunately, Yunyao gradually calmed down after 100 breaths of time. She stabbed the reverse water divine sword into the ground, formed a hand seal, and sat down cross-legged. Then, a dazzling golden light surged from her body, and her aura became holy and solemn. An illusory figure of a goddess that was 300 meters tall and formed from golden light appeared behind her. Half of the golden projection was dyed red by the blood-red light. The holy golden light and the strange blood-red light were in a stalemate. The two were devouring and resisting each other. Sometimes one was strong and the other was weak, and sometimes one was weak and the other was strong. Although no one knew what was going on, they could guess that Yunyao was resisting the inner demon tribulation and had reached the most critical juncture. Everyone held their breaths and stared at Yunyao without blinking, hoping that she would succeed. Unknowingly, a quarter of an hour passed. The holy golden light slowly gained the upper hand and dispersed all the blood-red light. When the projection of the goddess turned pure gold and no longer had any blood-red light, the tribulation cloud vortex in the sky finally dissipated. Without a doubt, Yunyao had successfully resolved the inner demon tribulation. Chapter 1750. The shadow of the goddess behind Yunyao slowly retracted into her body. Swoosh! After the whirlpool of tribulation clouds in the sky dissipated, it turned into colorful flowing lights that covered the sky and earth, pouring down like a tide. Yunyao sat upright on the ground. Her expression was calm and serene as she circulated her energy and devoured the five-colored brilliance. That was a powerful and sacred divine light. After successfully passing the heavenly tribulation, she would definitely receive rewards and feedback. Yunyao bathed in the colorful divine light. The bloodstains on her body quickly disappeared, and her injuries healed quickly. Her strength was also skyrocketing. She broke through the primordial soul stage and reached the first stage of the tribulation stage. Only after an entire hour did the five-colored divine light disappear, completely refined by her. The sky became calm and clear again. The blue sky and the golden sun reappeared. Yunyao finished her cultivation and stood up slowly. She stood at the top of solitary Cloud Peak. At that moment, her white clothes and long hair were as white as snow. Her body was dyed with a layer of gold by the morning sun. She was as sacred and majestic as a goddess. A majestic aura was emitted from her body and lingered in the sky. The god's disciples and guards standing in the sky felt an invisible pressure. They could not help but be in awe. Without a doubt, Yunyao had reached the tribulation stage and was qualified to be called a martial lord. Granny Long revealed a gratified smile and said excitedly, "That's great. Yunyao has finally passed the heavenly tribulation and reached the tribulation stage. Moreover, she is the only peerless genius who has passed 8 heavenly tribulations in the past 1,000 years. Now that she has reached the first stage of the tribulation stage, her strength and foundation are comparable to those of the third or fourth stage of the tribulation stage. Her future is limitless." The deacons nodded in agreement. They were relieved. Many gods' disciples and guards were envious and amazed. They admired Yunyao very much. Ji Tianqing stood in the sky and looked at Yunyao with a smile. His eyes were filled with relief. At this moment, Yunyao stepped into the sky and left solitary Cloud Peak. She flew towards the crowd. She flew straight to Ji Tianqing and stood in front of him. Ji Tianqing smiled and asked, "Yao Yao, how are you feeling now? Have you recovered from your injuries?" Yunyao nodded slightly and said, "I'm fine now. After successfully passing the tribulation, the divine light from the heavens will heal most of my injuries." Granny Long and a few deacons flew over and asked her about her situation. A few disciples of God also gathered around and congratulated her. Yunyao exchanged a few pleasantries with everyone before leaving with Ji Tianqing and returning to Cloud Water Palace. Granny Long didn't stay any longer and hurried back to her residence to report the news to martial god Luo Shui. Only the deacons, guards, and disciples of God refused to leave. They stayed around the solitary Cloud Peak and discussed excitedly. Cloud Water Palace, in an elegant and cozy room. Yunyao and Ji Tianqing were sitting at the table and talking in low voices. "Yao Yao, was the 8th lightning tribulation you just experienced the legendary inner demon tribulation?" Ji Tianqing looked at Yunyao with concern. Yunyao nodded and said, "That's right. It was the inner demon tribulation." Ji Tianqing thought for a while and asked, "What was the inner demon tribulation like? How did you resolve it?" "My inner demon tribulation." Yunyao frowned slightly. After thinking for a while, she shook her head and said, "The process was very complicated and messy. I can't explain it in a few words. However, the 2 most important points in the inner demon tribulation are the demons and goddess Yaoguang. Ji Tianqing frowned and asked, "What do you mean?" Yunyao explained, "I inherited Goddess Yaoguang's divine Tao inheritance. No matter if it's Goddess Yaoguang or me, we have a blood feud with the demons. In the illusory realm of the inner demon tribulation, I saw countless scenes of the Devil Clan and fought countless battles with Devil Clan experts. I also awakened some of Goddess Yaoguang's memories and saw the ancient divine battle. I even saw the future where we work together to deal with the ancestor fiend god." "I see." Ji Tianqing showed a look of realization. He nodded and asked, "What was the result?" Yunyao's face darkened and her eyes dimmed. She said, "It was a narrow escape." Ji Tianqing fell silent. His eyes, which were full of anticipation, also dimmed. After a while, he shook his head and said, "Don't worry. That's just the future you saw in the inner demon tribulation. Maybe it's also a test from the heavens. The real future is full of unknowns. It's hard to predict. No one can determine the result. I believe that as long as we work hard enough, grow fast enough, and become strong enough, we will have the chance to kill the ancestor fiend god in the future." Yunyao nodded and said, "Yes, I understand." Ji Tianqing continued, "All right, Yao Yao, you should rest for 2 days. When your condition stabilizes, we will set off for the Mountain of Flames." Yunyao responded. She got up and walked into the secret room to adjust her breathing. She had just reached the tribulation realm and needed to cultivate for 2 days to consolidate her martial arts realm. Ji Tianqing was not idle either. He made preparations for the trip to the Mountain of Flames and then meditated. Early in the morning 2 days later, Ji Tianqing was meditating and adjusting his breathing. Suddenly, a guard came to report that a young man and woman were asking for an audience. The two people claimed to be Ji Tianqing's servants, named Ji Bai and Shohei. Hearing this news, Ji Tianqing hurriedly asked the guard to let them in. Not long after, Ji Bai and Shohei entered the Cloud Water Palace and came to the room for an audience. Ji Bai greets Master. Shohei greets Master. Ji Bai and Shohei stood side by side in the room and bowed respectfully to Ji Tianqing. No need for formalities. Ji Tianqing nodded slightly and looked at the two of them. He found that they were travel-worn and there was a hint of worry and tiredness between their brows. Moreover, their auras were a little chaotic and there was blood aura on their bodies. It was obvious that they had been injured. Ji Tianqing sensed that the situation was not good, so he asked, "Ji Bai, Shohei, why did you return to the Pillar of Heaven's mountain for more than 2 months? Looking at your complexions, you seem to have suffered heavy injuries. What the hell is going on?" Ji Bai cupped his hands and was about to explain. However, Shohei took a step forward and said in front of him, "Master, we did encounter some trouble when we returned to the Pillar of Heaven's mountain this time, but we easily resolved it. We came back late and made Master worry. Please punish us." Ji Tianqing understood their temperament. He knew that as a woman, Shohei was more meticulous. Ji Bai had always been cold and his thoughts were simple. He guessed that Shohei was hiding something, so he asked in a dignified tone, "Shohei, you don't have to hide it from me. I have already detected that not only do you have blood aura, you also have devil aura. Tell me the truth, did you fight with the Devil Clan?" This. Shohei was seen through by Ji Tianqing and was immediately embarrassed, not knowing how to answer. Ji Tianqing did not ask her and his gaze fell on Ji Bai. Chapter 1751. Ji Bai had never lied, especially to Ji Tianqing. This was his nature, he would rather not open his mouth and not speak nonsense. After a long silence, he cupped his hands towards Ji Tianqing and explained, reporting to Master, "Shohei did not intend to hide anything, I just did not want you to worry." "Of course I understand." Ji Tianqing nodded and said in a deep voice, "I just want to know what happened." Ji Bai thought for a moment and replied, Master's guess is correct, we have indeed encountered trouble, and the other party is indeed a demon. After all, Tianzhu Mountain is in the north of Tianjue Kingdom, adjacent to the three divine kingdoms and Dark North Mountain. The demons of Dark North Mountain are different from before, they are no longer low-key and have become unusually active recently. Granny Long had already revealed similar information before, so Ji Tianqing had already understood the situation. Hearing Ji Bai's answer, he was not surprised and continued to ask, did you two have a conflict with the demons, or did the demons take action against Tianzhu Mountain? Ji Bai and Shohei were startled for a moment, and their eyes flashed with a strange light. Obviously, the two of them did not expect Ji Tianqing's intuition to be so sharp that he could see through the details with a single glance. Shohei quickly explained, Master, please do not worry about this matter, Tianzhu Mountain can handle it. Ji Tianqing raised his eyebrows and said with a solemn expression, so, I guessed right, the demons really did make a move against Tianzhu Mountain? Ji Bai added, it's just a small-scale harassment, Master does not need to take it to heart. Ji Tianqing nodded slightly and did not say anything. Even if Tianzhu Mountain was attacked by the demons, he could not help now. His top priority was to rush to Blazing Mountain as soon as possible to gather materials to repair the divine sword. After a moment of silence, he said in a deep voice, ever since the ancestral devil god came to Shenwu continent, the demons of Dark North Mountain have a leader and have become even more rampant. Dark North Mountain has been dormant for tens of thousands of years, and they are strong enough to wait for their ancestral devil god to appear. Looking at the current situation, the demons' ambition is difficult to contain, and I am afraid that they will bring chaos to the world. However, with our current situation, it is not suitable for us to confront the demons head-on. Ji Bai and Shohei both nodded in agreement. Master is wise. The Great Immortal said the same thing. Great Immortal, you've always reminded us that we've waited for 1,000 years, and we've endured it. Now that Master has appeared, all the more we can't be anxious. We must be even more calm and careful. Ji Tianqing nodded and ordered, Ji Bai, Shohei, you two go into the sword world first and focus on recuperating. I have important matters to attend to and will be leaving the Luotian Mountain in a few days to head to the ruins of gods. I'll call you out when I need you. Ji Bai and Shohei cupped their hands in salute at the same time. Then, Ji Tianqing took out the Sword of Burial of Heaven, opened the entrance to the Sword World, and put the two of them inside. Not long after, Yunyao also finished her cultivation and walked out of the secret room. After 2 days of rest and recuperation, her mental state and magic power had reached their peak, and her martial arts realm had also been consolidated. She instructed Black Eagle and Golden Dragon before following Ji Tianqing out of the Cloud Water Palace. After the two of them left the Luotian Mountain, Ji Tianqing summoned Black Dragon and rode it towards the ruins of gods. Ever since Black Dragon swallowed the divine dragon crystal, it had been cultivating in seclusion for the past few months. Its strength had increased rapidly, and its body had also undergone some changes. Now, it had reached the 7th level of the Essence Soul Realm, and its body was more than 2,000 feet long. However, this was only the initial results, and definitely not the final effect of the divine dragon crystal. The true effect of the divine dragon crystal had yet to be unleashed. Black Dragon still needed a few decades to completely absorb the power of the divine dragon crystal. Unknowingly, a month passed. Black Dragon carried Ji Tianqing and Yunyao and flew across the sky at lightning speed, advancing towards the northwest. In the first half of the month, Black Dragon traveled through the Luoshui divine nation. Everything was peaceful, and they didn't encounter any dangers. However, in the next half a month, the group entered the Heaven Extinction Divine Kingdom's territory. This region was the most desolate territory in the Heaven Extinction Divine Kingdom. It was close to the ruins of gods and North Underworld Mountain, so the environment was dangerous. As Black Dragon traveled, it often encountered danger. For example, there were attacks from powerful fey beasts, as well as groups of adventurer teams attacking it. The fey beasts that lurked in the mountains and rivers were powerful fey beasts at the Tribulation Transcendence realm as long as they could occupy an area and declare themselves overlords. When they sensed Black Dragon's aura, they were like hungry wolves that had seen a lamb. They only wanted to pounce on it and devour it clean. Ji Tianqing and Yunyao could easily deal with these Tribulation Transcendence realm fey beasts. They could either kill them or repel them. What troubled Ji Tianqing and Yunyao the most were the adventurer teams that licked blood and committed all sorts of evil. These adventurer teams were formed by warriors at the Essence Soul realm and above. There were at most dozens of them, and at least a dozen. The leaders of these adventurer teams were often at the Tribulation Transcendence realm. To put it nicely, these people were called adventurer teams. With rich experience and strength, they explored all kinds of ruins and forbidden areas. In fact, they were a group of desperados who committed all sorts of crimes. In order to plunder resources and wealth, they did not hesitate to rob, kill, and commit arson. On the way to the ruins of gods, Black Dragon encountered two adventurer teams one after another. Without exception, when the two adventurer teams saw Black Dragon and found that there were only Ji Tianqing and Yunyao on its back, they both had evil intentions. In the world of martial arts, divine dragons were unattainable. Only the three martial gods could control them. Flood dragons were more numerous and more common. They were the mounts and pet beasts that countless experts dreamed of. When the warriors of the two adventurer teams saw the legendary Black Dragon, of course, they pounced on it without caring about their own safety, trying to take it for themselves. In order to achieve their goal, the two adventurer teams were unscrupulous. Traps, ambushes, poisons, assassinations, and sieges. They took turns to use all sorts of methods just to kill Ji Tianqing and Yunyao and snatch Black Dragon. However, there was no doubt about the outcome. The first adventurer team had fewer people, only about a dozen warriors. They were basically at the Essence Soul realm, and their leader was at the First Firmament Tribulation Transcendence realm. When dealing with this adventurer team, Ji Tianqing and Yunyao used lightning-fast methods to kill more than a dozen people. The remaining adventurers were scared out of their wits as they fled. As for the second adventurer team, they had more people. There were more than 30 of them, and all of them were elites at the Fourth Firmament Essence Soul realm and above. The leader and the strategist were experts at the Second and Third Firmament Tribulation Transcendence realm. The members of this adventurer team knew how to divide the work and work together. They each had their own duties, and their methods were cunning and changeable. They were very difficult to deal with. Ji Tianqing and Yunyao tangled with this adventurer team for 9 days and 9 nights, traversing 500,000 kilometers. Both sides fought with wits and courage, using all sorts of methods and mystic techniques. Finally, the outcome was decided. Ji Tianqing and Yunyao were safe and sound, but Black Dragon was slightly injured. Chapter 1752. More than 40 days later, the Black Dragon left the Heaven's divine nation and entered the ruins of God. The vast and boundless ruins of God was covered with desolate grayish-brown mountain ranges that crisscrossed. The sky was filled with gray clouds and gloomy. The ground was also filled with a withered aura. Once one entered the ruins of God, one would feel depressed and their mood would become even more depressed. After what happened before, the Black Dragon already had experience. Even without Ji Tianqing's reminder, it knew that the ruins of God was extremely dangerous, so it became even more cautious. That evening, the Black Dragon was flying in the dark sky. Ji Tianqing sat on the back of the dragon, holding a map in his hand as he carefully examined it. According to the map, the blazing mountain was in the depths of the ruins of God, more than 2 million miles away from him. With the Black Dragon's flying speed, it would take about half a month to reach. Yunyao sat beside Ji Tianqing, silently meditating. In the past month or so, her strength had been consolidated and her fighting strength had increased by a lot. After Ji Tianqing kept the map, she also finished her meditation and opened her eyes. She turned her head to look at Ji Tianqing beside her and asked, "Tianqing, how long until we reach the blazing mountain?" Ji Tianqing replied, "If nothing unexpected happens, half a month is enough." Yunyao nodded and asked again, "Tianqing, we have already left the Luotian mountain for more than 40 days. Logically speaking, you should be about to undergo your tribulation, right?" Ji Tianqing revealed a trace of a smile and said playfully, "That's right. These few days, I often feel that the heavens are sending me a message. My heavenly tribulation will descend in about half a month." Yunyao frowned and said worriedly, "At that time, wouldn't we be in the blazing mountain?" She thought for a moment and said with a solemn expression, "Tianqing, the blazing mountain is extremely dangerous and is not suitable for you to undergo your tribulation. Accidents will definitely happen. In my opinion, we should find a hidden place so that no one will disturb you when you undergo your tribulation." Ji Tianqing nodded and said, "I understand. You don't have to worry. Let's get to the Mountain of Flames first." Seeing that he had a card up his sleeve, Yunyao felt much more at ease. Soon, half a month had passed. That afternoon, the Black Dragon carried Ji Tianqing and Yunyao and was about to arrive at the Flaming Mountain. While they were still several hundred miles away, the two of them could already see from high up in the sky that a sea of flames had appeared in the desolate mountain range ahead. It was an area shrouded in scarlet flames. There were several towering mountain ranges, all of which were emitting scarlet light and surrounded by fierce flames. Even from hundreds of miles away, Ji Tianqing could clearly feel the terrifyingly high temperature of the flames. The air was filled with a scorching hot aura, and even traces of dark red fire could be vaguely seen. As expected of the Mountain of Flames, everything within a few hundred miles is a forbidden zone. Warriors below the primordial soul realm are unable to stay here. Ji Tianqing sighed as he looked at the flaming mountain in front of him. Yunyao stood side by side with him on the dragon's back. She looked around with a deep gaze and observed the situation. "Tianqing, this place has already become a place of trouble. I'm afraid there are several groups of people lurking within 1,000 miles. Oh?" Ji Tianqing raised his eyebrows and said with a playful smile, "It seems that the news of the appearance of the glazed fire dragon has spread. That's why it has attracted the attention of various experts." He released his divine sense and extended it in all directions, carefully inspecting the sky and the earth. Soon, he discovered that there were indeed traces left behind by martial experts within a few dozen miles of the surrounding area. Yunyao reminded him again, "Tianqing, in order to avoid unnecessary trouble, you'd better put away the black dragon." Ji Tianqing smiled and nodded. "It's too eye-catching for us to come on the black dragon. It's probably already attracted the attention of some experts." As he spoke, he took out the Sword of Burial of Heaven and put the black dragon into the sword world. At the same time, he summoned Ji Bai and Shohei and asked them to follow him secretly. After they were ready, Ji Tianqing and Yunyao flew across the sky and rushed towards the flaming mountain. As the two of them quickly approached the flaming mountain, there were several pairs of eyes spying on them in the mountains and rivers within a radius of hundreds of miles. 15 minutes later, Ji Tianqing and Yunyao arrived near the flaming mountain. The closer they got to the flaming mountain, the thinner the air between heaven and earth, and the more terrifying the temperature became. The two of them stood 50 miles away from the flaming mountain. They stopped in the sky and observed the flaming mountain at a close distance. They saw a few towering mountain ranges that were thousands of feet tall between the mountains. Those mountain ranges crisscrossed and stretched for tens of thousands of miles. They couldn't see the end at a glance. The towering mountain ranges that were thousands of feet tall were very steep and almost straight. The surrounding mountain ranges were grayish-brown and covered with weathered rocks. However, the flaming mountain was different. The mountain was dark red and revealed a faint golden color. The mountain had been burned by the glass heavenly fire. After tens of thousands of years, the impurities had long been removed and it had become as smooth and shiny as a glazed tile. In addition, the mountain contained rich mineral resources. All kinds of mineral veins and gems had been burned and tempered by the glass heavenly fire, which was why they had a faint golden color. Ji Tianqing had no doubt that even a few stones dug out from the flaming mountain were valuable treasures to ordinary cultivators. While he and Yunyao were observing the flaming mountain, the terrifying high temperature roasted them. There were even wisps of flames floating in the sky that kept flying towards them. Every flame was as thin as a strand of hair, but it contained a sharp and violent aura. He and Yunyao could only use their dermic powers to form a thin shield on the surface of their bodies to resist the corrosion of the flames and high temperature. At this moment, two figures flew over from afar and headed straight for the flaming mountain. They were two powerhouses, one old and one young. The old man had white hair and a beard, and he wore a purple robe. He held a golden horsetail whisk in his hand and wore a crown with 3 flowers and 7 stars on his head. He had the aura of an otherworldly expert. Following behind the old man was a young man dressed in black martial arts attire. This person's body was tall and sturdy, and his face and aura were quite strong. His eyes were cold and sharp. He carried a black heavy sword that was as wide as a bench, and his movements carried the aura of wind and thunder. He was obviously a powerhouse in the Tribulation Transcendence realm. When they passed by Yunyao and Ji Tianqing, the two of them paused for a moment. The purple-robed old man tilted his head slightly and sized up Ji Tianqing and Yunyao. He said with a serious expression, "Young man, this is not a place for you to come. Leave quickly." Ji Tianqing frowned slightly and said expressionlessly, "What does it have to do with you where we are going? This flaming mountain is not your territory." The purple-robed old man was stunned for a moment, and a sneer flashed across his eyes. He shook his head and did not speak anymore, as if he could not be bothered to lower himself to Ji Tianqing's level. On the other hand, the young man in black was quite dissatisfied with Ji Tianqing's attitude. He shouted coldly, "Kid, be more polite with your words." Chapter 1753. The young man's tone and expression were somewhat overbearing. The purple-robed elder thought even more highly of himself and was too lazy to waste his breath. Ji Tianqing could not help but sneer. He said indifferently, "I'm not familiar with you. I don't need your kind reminder." Hearing this, the purple-robed elder frowned slightly, revealing a hint of displeasure in his eyes. The young man's expression became colder and colder. He glared at Ji Tianqing with a sharp gaze and shouted angrily, "Brat, you really don't know how to appreciate favors. My martial uncle is the famous Bright Sword Martial Lord. It is your fortune that he is willing to remind you." "Bright Sword Martial Lord?" Ji Tianqing raised his eyebrows. The young man revealed an arrogant expression. He raised his chin and said, "That's right. Now you know how stupid you are, right? Apologize to my martial uncle immediately. Perhaps my martial uncle will be magnanimous and forgive your ignorant offense." The sneer on Ji Tianqing's face became even more pronounced. He said with a mocking tone, "Hee, what Bright Sword Martial Lord? I've never heard of him. You'd better enjoy this so-called blessing for yourself. As for apologizing, don't even think about it. Brat." The young man was ridiculed and became even angrier. He shouted angrily, "I'll give you one last chance. If you don't apologize, you'll have to bear the consequences." As he spoke, he raised his right hand and grabbed the hilt of the heavy sword, as if he was about to draw his sword. "I'd like to see what kind of ability you have to be so arrogant and overbearing." Ji Tianqing did not budge an inch as he looked at him indifferently. A black light flashed in his right hand and the sword of burial of heaven appeared. Seeing this, the two of them seemed to be at loggerheads and were about to attack at any moment. The young man was already riding a tiger and could not back down. He could not stop because of his face. At this moment, Bright Sword Martial Lord raised his hand and said expressionlessly, "Chen Yu, don't be presumptuous, lest you delay the proper business." The young man named Chen Yu furrowed his brows and said unwillingly, "Martial uncle, but this kid is too arrogant." Honorable Sword Martial Lord said without changing his expression, "Some young people don't know the immensity of heaven and earth, so how can we lower ourselves to their level? Isn't that a disgrace to this monarch status? People who don't know what's good for them will be taught a lesson sooner or later." Chen Yu let go of the sword hilt and withdrew his right hand. He cupped his hands and said, "Martial uncle is right, Chen Yu will remember." Finished speaking, he fiercely glared at Ji Tianqing before following Bright Sword Martial Lord and flying away. The two of them flew across the sky at lightning speed. Soon, they entered the flaming mountain and disappeared. Yunyao frowned and said in an indifferent tone, "There are always some self-righteous people who take advantage of their seniority and want to teach others. They even think that they have noble character and unquestionable integrity. What a joke." Ji Tianqing nodded and said, "Yes, there are nosy people everywhere." Finished speaking, he pondered for a moment, then analyzed, although that honorable sword martial lord is annoying, he's still considered a righteous martial artist of the profound sect. The reason why he stopped Chen Yu is probably because he's in a hurry to enter the flaming mountain to deal with some important matter. It's very likely that it's related to the glazed fire dragon. Yunyao nodded slightly and added, "There's another reason. There are too many people here, and there are also a few groups of experts hiding in the dark. Honorable Sword Martial Lord doesn't want to cause too much trouble. Let's go, let's also enter the flaming mountain to take a look." Ji Tianqing stopped talking about this matter and immediately flew forward. Yunyao hesitated for a moment, then secretly asked, "Tianqing, are we really going in now? I'm afraid your heavenly tribulation is coming, right?" Ji Tianqing nodded and said, "It should be in the next 2 days, but I'm not sure which day it will be." "Yao Yao, don't worry. Let's enter the flaming mountain and take a look at the situation. It won't be too late to make a decision." As his voice fell, 2 more groups of martial artists appeared in the sky not far away. One of the groups of martial artists had 3 people, all of whom were Tribulation Realm experts. Leading them was an old woman with a head full of white hair. She held a purple jade dragon-headed walking stick and wore a luxurious robe with astral patterns. Behind her were 2 middle-aged men dressed in armor and wielding swords. They were dressed as guards. It was obvious that the 3 of them came from powerful family clans and had extraordinary heritage. They flew across the sky as fast as lightning and flew straight into the flaming mountain. Their figures were engulfed by the sea of flames. As for the other group of martial artists, there were 9 of them. They were all middle-aged men with powerful auras. The leader was dressed in red robes and carried a saber on his back. His body emitted a domineering and bloody aura. The other 8 people had strength at the 6th or 7th firmament essence soul realm. Their skills and auras were rather elite. This was clearly an adventurer team. Whoosh! 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 A beam of light flashed as the adventurer team stopped in front of Ji Tianqing. Everyone stared at Ji Tianqing and Yunyao as they sized them up indifferently. However, everyone only sized up Ji Tianqing before their gazes landed on Yunyao. They revealed looks of amazement and shock. There were even a few adventurers who had covetous looks in their eyes. However, they quickly concealed it. The leading red-robed man crossed his arms in front of his chest and smiled at Ji Tianqing. He said, "Little brother, I'm the leader of the Wild Thunder Adventurer team, Lei Kuang. The both of you are so young, yet you dare to explore the ruins of God. Your strength and guts are extraordinary. I admire both of you, so. Without waiting for Lei Kuang to finish his sentence, Ji Tianqing said expressionlessly, "We are not interested in an adventurer team. If you wish to invite us to join, you don't have to say it." Lei Kuang choked on the second half of his sentence as the smile on his face froze. The few fierce-looking adventurers immediately revealed their anger as they looked sharply at Ji Tianqing. However, Lei Kuang quickly regained his composure and waved his hand at the adventurers behind him. He looked calmly at Ji Tianqing and continued, "Little brother, you are very confident, but do you know where this place is? The famous Flaming Mountain. One of the most dangerous forbidden areas in the ruins of God. Don't blame me for not reminding you. With your strength and adventure experience, do you think you can have designs on the glazed fire dragon? You are definitely courting death." Ji Tianqing glanced at him indifferently and said indifferently, "You don't have to worry about that." Lei Kuang frowned and sighed. "Well, to each his own. I won't force you. When you have thought it through, come and find me. The Wild Thunder Adventurer team will still accept you." After saying that, Lei Kuang led the 8 adventurers away and flew toward the Flaming Mountain. The adventurers were a little angry and secretly asked, "Leader, why are you so good-tempered today? You even called that kid brother?" "Boss, that kid is so arrogant. Why don't you let us teach him a lesson? That kid doesn't know what's good for him." "Boss, why did you give him a chance?" Lei Kuang grinned and revealed a mocking sneer. He said in a sinister tone, "Humph, what do you know? I'm casting a long line to catch a big fish. When that kid enters the Flaming Mountain, his life will no longer be in his hands." Chapter 1754. After the Wild Thunder adventurers left, Ji Tianqing and Yunyao rushed to the Blazing Mountain. During this time, 2 more groups of Tribulation Realm powerhouses emerged from the mountains and flew towards the Blazing Mountain. These powerhouses all had different appearances, and it was obvious that they came from different parts of the Shenwu continent. However, they all had the same goal, the glazed fire dragon in the Blazing Mountain. Ji Tianqing and Yunyao flew towards the Blazing Mountain at a leisurely pace. They were not anxious at all. Both of them knew that whether or not they could obtain the glazed fire dragon had nothing to do with the time they entered the Blazing Mountain. The more impatient a person was, the easier it was for them to make mistakes and suffer losses. Not long after, the 2 arrived at the edge of the Blazing Mountain. The air was filled with scorching heat, and layers of scarlet flames with hints of gold rushed towards them like huge waves. Ji Tianqing and Yunyao both used their magic power to form an icy blue shield around their bodies to protect themselves. Under the high temperature and the scarlet flames, the icy blue shield continuously evaporated into a hazy mist, and its defensive power was constantly being weakened. The 2 of them needed to continuously provide magic power to maintain the shield's integrity and operation. In other words, once the 2 of them stepped into the Blazing Mountain, they would continuously consume their magic power. If they did not leave the range of the Blazing Mountain before their magic power ran out, their lives would be in danger. Yunyao stared at the Blazing Mountain in front of her and said solemnly, "Tianqing, we saw it with our own eyes. Several groups of powerhouses have already entered the Blazing Mountain. There must be a large number of powerhouses gathered in the Blazing Mountain now. We need to be careful and not let our guard down." Ji Tianqing nodded. I understand. The scarlet flames in the periphery of the Blazing Mountain are not too strong, and the temperature is not too high either. Even a primordial spirit realm powerhouse can last for half a day. Don't use the water reversal sword for now. It's our greatest trump card, and we can only use it at a critical moment. Yunyao naturally understood what he meant and nodded. The 2 of them then stepped into the scarlet sea of flames and entered the Blazing Mountain. As soon as they entered the range of the Blazing Mountain, the 2 of them were engulfed by the sea of flames, and the surrounding temperature doubled. Violent waves of fire continued to attack, blocking the two of them from advancing. There were also countless wisps of flames that shot out like a rain of arrows, constantly bombarding the two's mana shields. The two of them were in the flaming mountain, and their flying speed was reduced by 40%. As they flew deeper into the mountain range, the two of them lowered their heads and observed their surroundings. Beneath his feet was a towering mountain range that was thousands of feet tall. The mountain was crimson in color and emitted a faint golden light. The mountains and the earth had been scorched for tens of thousands of years, turning into a translucent glaze that contained rich metallic minerals. Ji Tianqing released his divine sense and immediately discovered that there were large amounts of metal ores hidden inside the mountain. However, the temperature inside the mountain was even more terrifying. It was also quite difficult to enter the mountain to mine the ores. The fiery mountain covered an area of 1 million miles, and was formed by dozens of magnificent mountain ranges. The terrain was quite complicated. The two of them identified a direction and flew straight into the depths of the mountain range. About an hour later, the two of them had flown a few thousand miles away. At that moment, Ji Tianqing suddenly discovered a group of Essence Soul Realm warriors in the mountain range to his left. They were digging for ores in the mountain. It was a group of adventurers. There were a total of 12 of them, and their leader had the strength of a First Firmament Tribulation Transcendence cultivator. The strength of the 11 adventurers was at the 6th Firmament Essence Soul Realm and above. The group of adventurers had excavated a small passageway in the rock wall halfway up the mountain that led straight into the interior of the mountain. 2 adventurers stayed behind to guard the passageway while the rest entered the belly of the mountain. They quickly excavated the ores and plundered the various gems and ores. Ji Tianqing probed and discovered that there were 7 ores of different sizes hidden in the mountain. The ores that the group of adventurers had excavated were the largest fire spirit gold ore, and also the most valuable one. The adventurers were very skilled and appeared to be very experienced. It was obvious at a glance that they often did such things. Ji Tianqing only observed for about 100 seconds before the group of adventurers dug up more than 1,000 ores. They were even lucky enough to dig up 3 fire spirit gold crystals. When Yunyao noticed that he was observing the others excavating, she asked with a voice transmission, "Tianqing, what materials do you lack to repair the divine sword?" Ji Tianqing answered calmly, "I'm still lacking 2 materials. Wind lightning meteorite iron and golden crow copper marrow." Yunyao frowned and thought for a moment before persuading, "Those 2 materials are top refinement materials. They are extremely rare. I wonder if the fiery mountain has them? Let's hope so." Ji Tianqing smiled as he consoled himself. At that moment, the 2 adventurers guarding the passageway's entrance sensed the existence of Ji Tianqing and Yunyao. Seeing that the duo had stayed near the mountain for a long time without any intention of leaving, the 2 adventurers raised their guard and revealed a strong sense of hostility. Ji Tianqing could not be bothered with the 2 adventurers. He did not want to waste time here either. He was about to leave with Yunyao. But at that moment, more than a dozen fire demons that were 100 feet tall and had ferocious appearances suddenly emerged from the mountain's interior. Every fire demon had the strength of a 7th or 8th firmament essence soul. They exuded a violent and evil aura. Their sudden appearance alarmed the 10 adventurers. They stopped excavating the ores and charged at the fire demons with their swords and sabers. The 2 parties began fighting in the mountain. Their battle produced loud rumbling sounds that shook the heavens and earth. The powerful aftershocks of the battle struck the mountain wantonly. They erupted from the passageway, forming a huge 5-colored pillar of light that shot into the sky. What surprised Ji Tianqing was that the mountain was abnormally sturdy. It was like a Dharma treasure that had been tempered thousands of times. More than a dozen adventurers and more than a dozen fire demons exchanged dozens of blows in the belly of the mountain. The mountain shook incessantly, but it did not collapse. About 30 seconds later, the adventurer team suffered heavy casualties. 4 people died on the spot, and 6 were severely injured. Only the first Firmament Tribulation Transcendence adventurer team leader was able to withstand the fire demon's attacks and was not injured. He led the 6 surviving adventurers and rushed out of the passageway as fast as lightning. They flew out without looking back. 9 fire demons chased after them. They roared as they flew across the sky and began their pursuit of the adventurer team. In just a few seconds, the adventurers and the fire demons disappeared in the crimson sea of fire. Upon seeing this scene, Ji Tianqing and Yunyao exchanged glances. Their eyes turned solemn. This is only the periphery of the flaming mountain. There are so many fiendish demons lurking in the mountain. If we enter the depths of the flaming mountain, we will probably encounter even more powerful fiendish demons. It's no wonder those adventurers are all desperados. They walk the line between life and death all day long. They are probably used to it. That's why they treat life so lightly. Chapter 1755. In the next 6 hours, Ji Tianqing and Yunyao flew more than 15,000 kilometers. Along the way, the two of them encountered another group of adventurers. The difference was that there were fewer adventurers in this group. There were only 4 of them. The 4 adventurers were all young men and women. Their attire was rather special and memorable. There was a red-haired man who was as strong as an iron tower, a weak young master in a white robe, a hot woman in a leather coat, and a woman in a long dress with a zither on her back. The 4 of them had reached the second stage of the Tribulation Transcendence realm and had mastered powerful secret techniques. They cooperated very well. When Ji Tianqing and Yunyao encountered them, the 4 of them were surrounded by more than 20 lava giants. The lava giants hid deep underground. They usually hid in the lava and lived by devouring mineral veins and spiritual fire. They were very tall and burly. Their bodies seemed to be made of rock and metal. Their bodies contained a violent power that could destroy the world. The 4 young adventurers used all their strength and various secret techniques to barely block the lava giants' attacks. However, it was very difficult for them to kill those lava giants. It was almost impossible for them to escape the encirclement. Ji Tianqing and Yunyao observed for a while and realized that the 4 adventurers did not look like ordinary adventurers. They were more like genius disciples of some large factions. Therefore, Ji Tianqing decided to save them after weighing the pros and cons for a while. He and Yunyao worked together, each using a powerful secret skill. With a thunderous momentum, they instantly killed the 4 lava giants. A gap was immediately torn open in the lava giants' encirclement. With their help, the 4 young geniuses desperately broke out of the encirclement and killed a few lava giants together. Only then did they manage to escape. The group did not continue to fight. After breaking out of the encirclement, they left and escaped. Those lava giants had violent power and strong defense, but speed was their weakness. In just 100 breaths of time, the group shook off the dozen lava giants that were chasing after them. The group fled to a 10,000 feet tall glazed mountain and temporarily stopped to rest. Only now did the 4 young experts relax as if a heavy burden had been lifted from their shoulders. They quickly bowed to Ji Tianqing and Yunyao and thanked them sincerely. The white-robed young man, who was the leader of the group, even took out 2 superior-grade tribulation pills and gave them to Ji Tianqing as a thank-you gift. Ji Tianqing chatted with the other party for a while before he understood the situation of this adventurer team. It turned out that these 4 young geniuses were all from the Heaven End Divine Nation, and they were the elite experts of the Heaven-Shattering Alliance. It was Ji Tianqing's first time hearing about the Broken Heaven Alliance. After asking the white-robed young master, he found out that the Broken Sky Alliance was not under the jurisdiction of any empire. It was an alliance formed by martial Dao experts. At the same time, the Broken Sky Alliance was one of the top 10 martial arts organizations on the Divine Martial Continent. As long as one was a cultivator above the primordial spirit realm, abiding by the rules of the heaven-shattering alliance and acknowledging its ideals, they could apply to join. The Broken Heaven Alliance had over 100,000 members, and they were spread all over the Heaven and Divine Nation. No matter which divine nation, race, or force they were from, as long as they met the requirements, they could join the Broken Sky Alliance. The Broken Sky Alliance treated all members equally, rewarding them based on their contributions and assigning them positions based on their strength and contributions. These 4 young experts were all geniuses with outstanding talent and ambition. Of course, although they looked young, they had actually lived for 200 to 300 years. They wanted to make a name for themselves, so they formed an adventurer team and came to the Flaming Mountain to search for the Golden Lotus of Fire. Every Golden Lotus of Fire was a rare treasure that was hard to come by in 100 years, and they were the best of the best among spirit herbs. If they could find 2 or more Golden Lotuses of Fire, the 4 of them would accumulate a lot of contributions and qualify to run for the position of deacon. After they entered the Flaming Mountain, they tried their best to sneak into the depths of the ground. Unfortunately, they had just entered the underground lava lake, and before they could find the Golden Lotus of Fire, they alerted the lava giant hiding in the lava lake. Of course, what happened next was self-explanatory. After the white-robed young master finished telling the story, a smile of relief appeared on his fair and handsome face. He cupped his fists at Ji Tianqing and said, "Today, if it weren't for the 2 of you, we would have died here. The 4 of us will remember the kindness of our 2 benefactors in our hearts. In the future, if you need anything, please come to the Broken Sky Alliance to find us. I am Li Gan, this is Zhao Guangxiong, and that is junior sister Qingwan." The white-robed young master, Li Gan, introduced his companions to Ji Tianqing. His words and actions were quite graceful. Ji Tianqing waved his hand and said calmly, "Young Master Li, you don't need to say any more words of thanks. We still have important matters to attend to, so we will take our leave." Seeing that he was about to leave, Li Gan hurriedly raised his hand and said, "Benefactor, please wait. If I'm not wrong, the 2 of you are going to the depths of the Flaming Mountain to search for the whereabouts of the glazed fire dragon?" Ji Tianqing raised his eyebrows and did not comment. Seeing that he did not answer, Li Gan knew what was going on. He cupped his fists and said, "Benefactor, I have to remind you that if you want to snatch the glazed fire dragon, you should give up the idea as soon as possible. I'm not being rude, but the glazed fire dragon is a divine beast and must have reached the martial sage realm. If you go near it rashly, your life will be in danger. Moreover, in the past half a month, dozens of experts have entered the depths of the Flaming Mountain. Those experts came from all over the continent and they were all at least at the 3rd stage of the crossing tribulation realm. Many of them were famous martial lords. With so many experts trying to snatch the glazed fire dragon, I'm afraid the chances are slim. It's better for you not to take the risk." The woman named Qingwan carried a zither on her back and wore a long dress. She also walked to Li Gan's side and said sincerely, "Benefactors, I just received news yesterday that hundreds of experts have gathered in the depths of the Flaming Mountain. The glazed fire dragon has been forced to appear several times and every time, it would start a massacre and create a bloody storm. It is said that dozens of crossing tribulation realm experts have been killed." Ji Tianqing and Yunyao could tell that Li Gan and Qingwan were speaking from the bottom of their hearts. Ji Tianqing nodded slightly and said, "Thank you, young Master Li and Miss Qingwan, for your reminder. We know what to do. Goodbye." After that, he and Yunyao cupped their hands and bowed to the crowd and turned to leave. Li Gan, Qingwan, and the others could not persuade Ji Tianqing anymore. They could only stand there and watch as Ji Tianqing and Yunyao left. After the 2 disappeared into the sea of fire, Li Gan and the others retracted their gazes and began to discuss with complicated expressions. Sigh, those two benefactors are the real young geniuses. As expected, geniuses are proud and arrogant. That young Master Ji has not reached the crossing tribulation realm yet, but his combat strength is stronger than ours. It's incredible. He's a rare genius. In my opinion, those two benefactors have a lot of feelings for each other. They're probably a couple. They're a perfect match and both are so outstanding. I'm so envious. Suddenly, a large hole was pierced through the glass-like mountain wall. The opening was about 20 feet wide and more than 20 feet deep. The two of them entered the deep cave, Ji Tianqing leading the way with his sword in hand. He used his sword skill 3 more times and dug a hole 1,000 feet deep before he entered the belly of the mountain. The belly of the mountain was hollow and filled with caves of various sizes. They were all naturally formed. The gold crow copper ore that Ji Tianqing was looking for was in a huge cave that was 3,000 feet wide. The ground, ceiling, and surrounding walls of the cave were all dark red with a metallic luster. The air was extremely hot. The cave was filled with raging waves of fire that were enough to melt a mortal's soul-level Dharma treasures. Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao were inside the cave. They had no choice but to channel more magic power to maintain the operation of the shield and resist the burning of the spirit fire. The cave was filled with jagged rocks of strange shapes. The ground was covered with mounds, piles of rocks, and holes. Rows of faint golden stalactites hung upside down from the ceiling of the cave, like a forest of spears. A dark gold ore vein that was more than 3,000 feet long was lying on the ground like a giant dragon. This was the gold crow copper ore that Ji Tianqing was looking for. The ore vein stretched from one end of the cave to the other, passing through the entire cave. They could not see the source of the ore vein, nor could they see the end of the ore vein. They did not know how long it was. Most of the ore vein was buried underground. Only a small part of it was exposed, but it was still 100 feet high. The dark gold ore vein emitted a mysterious and ancient aura. It also had a terrifying temperature that burned people's souls. Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao stared at the gold crow copper ore and used their divine senses to examine it carefully. From the situation of this ore vein, it should be more than 10,000 years old. It has been purified by the glass heavenly fire. I just don't know if the ore vein has produced gold crow copper marrow. Yun Yao thought for a moment and said, Tianqing, let's search separately. It will save more time. You go north, and I'll go south. Ji Tianqing nodded in agreement. They searched north along the ore vein from the middle of the cave. Yun Yao and he had their backs facing each other. They searched south along the ore vein. The cave was silent. The two of them were focused on searching. Soon, 15 minutes passed. The two of them arrived at the two ends of the cave. They were blocked by the rock walls. However, neither of them found the gold crow copper marrow. Ji Tianqing sighed in disappointment. This ore vein is more than 10,000 feet long. More than half of it is buried in the mountain. We can only use a secret technique to drill into the mountain and search. Yun Yao comforted him. Don't be discouraged. This ore vein has been growing for 10,000 years. It is very rare on the continent. It is very likely that it has produced the gold crow copper marrow. Although it is a little troublesome, we have plenty of time. We can take it slow. Then, the two of them continued to search separately. The two of them used a secret technique to drill into the rock layer. They searched north and south along the gold crow copper Oregon. The mountain had been burned by the glass heavenly fire for tens of thousands of years. It was as hard as a high-grade nascent soul Dharma treasure. If the two of them used their divine swords to dig a cave along the ore vein, they would have to go through a lot of trouble. It would be a waste of time and energy. However, the two of them used a secret technique to travel through the mountain. Their speed was very slow. It was about the same as an ordinary person walking. Time passed silently. In the blink of an eye, an hour passed. Ji Tianqing traveled 3,000 feet in the mountain. He had already reached the end of the Gold Crow Copper Oregon. However, he still did not find the Gold Crow Copper Marrow. Therefore, he turned back and went through the cave to meet up with Yun Yao. He had just passed through the cave when he received Yun Yao's divine perception voice transmission. "Tianqing, come and see. I found it." Yun Yao's tone was joyful and a little excited. Ji Tianqing was stunned. He hurriedly drilled into the mountain and used a secret technique to rush over. When he found Yun Yao, he saw that Yun Yao was guarding a stone hill with a radius of several hundred feet in the rock layer. The Gold Crow Copper ore stopped here. That huge stone hill was obviously the source of the ore vein. Ji Tianqing followed Yun Yao's instructions and released his divine perception into the stone hill. He saw that there was a lump of ore that was half black and half gold deep in the dark golden stone hill. The ore was as big as a head. Its surface was diamond-shaped. It emitted a faint black golden light. It looked very mysterious. The metal and power aura it contained far surpassed the entire hill. Chapter 1757. Just as Yun Yao had expected, the Golden Crow Copper Marrow was indeed nurtured in this mine. Ji Tianqing was filled with joy and excitement. He hurriedly used the Burial of Heaven to break open the dark gold rock. He spent 15 minutes to dig a hole that was more than 100 feet deep and saw the Golden Crow Copper Marrow. However, the Golden Crow Copper Marrow had fused with the ore and was very difficult to separate. He tried a few times, but he could not use the Burial of Heaven to cut it off. After all, the Burial of Heaven was only a supreme-grade essence soul Dharma treasure. It had not even reached the tribulation level. Seeing this, Yun Yao had no choice but to use the reverse water divine sword and carefully cut the ore. The reverse water divine sword was a real divine artifact. It was indestructible and unstoppable. After a while, Yun Yao cut out the entire Golden Crow Copper Marrow and handed it to Ji Tianqing. Ji Tianqing took the Golden Crow Copper Marrow and felt that it was extremely heavy. The muscles in his arms tightened naturally. Although it was only a small piece of ore crystal, it was as heavy as a 1,000-foot mountain. The energy contained in it was extremely powerful and majestic. I thought that the Golden Crow Copper Marrow was extremely precious and that we would have to go through a lot of trouble to get it. I didn't expect that we would get this material in less than a day after entering the Mountain of Flames. Yao Yao, it seems like this is a good sign. It means that our trip will be very successful. Ji Tianqing said with satisfaction as he held the Golden Crow Copper Marrow in his hands and looked at it. Yun Yao also smiled and nodded. I hope everything goes well. Even if we can't get the glazed fire dragon, it would be great if we can gather the materials to repair the divine sword. However, just as she finished speaking, the originally calm rock layer suddenly trembled. Boom! A muffled sound came from the depths of the ground. The two of them frowned and had a bad feeling. What's going on? There seems to be some movement underground. Is there some kind of demon? As he spoke, Ji Tianqing stored the Golden Crow Copper essence into his spatial ring. He held the Sword of Burial of Heaven in his hand and released his divine sense to explore the situation underground. At this moment, Ji Bai and Shou He, who were guarding the cave passage, sent out divine sense transmissions almost at the same time. Master, the situation is not good. Quickly retreat. Master, there seems to be a powerful demonic beast underground. Ji Bai and Shohei had been secretly following and monitoring the situation around them. The two of them would not show themselves unless it was absolutely necessary. Ji Tianqing hurriedly pulled Yunyao along and used an escape technique to rush out of the mountain. Then, the whole mountain started to shake, and a rumbling sound came from underground. As Ji Tianqing fled, his divine sense also detected that there seemed to be a huge earthquake several thousand feet underground. The incomparably hard rock layer seemed to have been struck by a violent force. All of it protruded upwards, twisting and breaking into pieces. A pitch-black claw that was as large as a house reached out from the messy pile of rocks and easily pushed aside the shattered rock layer. The appearance of the giant claw was somewhat similar to a dragon's claw. Its surface was covered with black scales and had pitch-black sharp nails. A moment later, a second giant claw also reached out from the ground. The mountain shook even more violently, and the caves in the belly of the mountain collapsed one after another. A large and sharp black head emerged from the pile of rubble. It was the head of a giant beast, somewhat like a crocodile's head, but more like a pangolin that had been magnified 10,000 times. On the pitch-black head that was covered in scales, there was a pair of dark green eyes that were suffused with an ice-cold light. Its body wriggled a few times, and then it drilled out of the ground. With a forceful push of its two sturdy front claws, it crushed an ore vein into pieces. Its entire body emitted an incomparably ferocious aura as it opened its mouth and roared. Seeing this scene, Ji Tianqing's expression was solemn as he sped up and fled out of the mountain. After a short span of 20 breaths, he and Yunyao finally left the mountain and returned to the sky shrouded in a sea of fire. However, before the two of them could leave, the golden mountain wall behind them exploded with a bang. Half of the mountain wall had cracked, and countless pieces of rubble collapsed. Two gigantic pitch-black claws drilled out of the mountain peak. Immediately after, the mysterious giant beast that was hundreds of feet long and pitch-black all over also rushed out of the mountain. Swoosh! With a flash of black light, the mysterious giant beast pounced in front of Ji Tianqing and Yunyao. At this critical moment, Ji Tianqing pushed Yunyao away without hesitation. An incomparably powerful force enveloped Yunyao and sent her thousands of feet away. At the same time, one of the mysterious giant beast's front claws viciously slapped Ji Tianqing. Bam! Ji Tianqing was sent flying on the spot. His entire body was wrapped in a ball of golden light as he tumbled and crashed into the ground 5 kilometers away. The sudden heavy blow destroyed his dermic power shield and injured his internal organs. He opened his mouth and spat out a mouthful of blood. Fortunately, he took out the Kenshin battle robe in time and transformed it into a pair of wings to protect himself. The golden rock wings blocked most of the power, which allowed him to survive. He flew a full 5 kilometers away before he managed to neutralize the impact. He flapped his wings and flew back into the sky. At this moment, the mysterious giant beast pounced in front of Yunyao again and opened its mouth to spit out a monstrous golden flame. It was the terrifying heavenly glass fire. Seeing that Yunyao was about to be engulfed by the heavenly glass fire, Ji Tianqing's pupils constricted, and his heart was in his throat. Yao Yao, be careful. Fortunately, Yunyao was not flustered in the face of danger. She decisively swung the reverse water divine sword and slashed out 36 icy sword lights. Each sword light was 300 feet long, and the 36 sword lights gathered together to form a mysterious array formation. They formed a gigantic disk and began to spin rapidly. The icy blue disk released an endless amount of icy water and frost energy, which met the golden flames in the sky. Boom, 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 boom. Water and fire were incompatible. The heavenly glass fire and the icy water and frost energy collided, resulting in an earth-shattering explosion. Endless water vapor rose from the sky, but it was quickly evaporated by the sea of flames. The heavenly glass fire that blotted out the sky was also blocked by the icy blue disk and quickly dissipated. Yunyao successfully blocked the mysterious giant beast's attack with the reverse water divine sword. When the icy blue disk dissipated, Ji Tianqing had already flown to her side. Seeing that she was safe and sound, Ji Tianqing was relieved. The two of them stood side by side and faced off against the mysterious giant beast. The mysterious giant beast occupied the shattered mountain peak and looked down at the two of them from above. Its dark green eyes revealed a bloodthirsty glint. Shohei, who was hiding in the dark, used his divine sense to send a voice transmission to Ji Tianqing. Master, this mysterious giant beast should be the legendary Xitigarbha divine armor. In ancient times, the underground armored beast was a mutated species born from the combination of the fire dragon and the black tortoise. This kind of Xitigarbha divine armor is very rare. It lives in the depths of the Earth's core and feeds on magma, earth fire, and metal veins. It has the power to control the earth and veins. All kinds of historical records clearly recorded that this kind of Xitigarbha divine armor was worthy of being the overlord of the earth. Chapter 1758. I knew that the golden crow copper marrow wouldn't be so easy to obtain. Ji Tianqing looked at the Xitigarbha divine armor and muttered to himself. Yunyao held the water reversal divine sword, her body glowing with icy blue light and strong fighting spirit. Tianqing, this giant beast is too strong, and it has devoured many metal veins. Its defense must be very strong. We shouldn't fight it. After we find a chance to shake it off, we should leave this place as soon as possible to avoid more trouble. Ji Tianqing thought for a moment and smiled playfully. He said, this Xitigarbha divine armor is the legendary ruler of the earth. It has the power to control the earth and veins. If we can capture or subdue it and give it to the earth spirit race as their divine beast, it would be a good choice. The Earth Spirit race had been living in the Sword World with peaceful Earth City as their foundation and developing. The Xitigarbha divine armor's power and talent were very similar to the Earth Spirit races. That was why Ji Tianqing had this idea. Subdue this Xitigarbha divine armor? Yunyao tilted her head to look at him, a look of disbelief in her eyes. Tianqing, we don't even know if we can defeat it, much less subdue it. Ji Tianqing shook his head and said, let's fight it first. As he spoke, he held the sword of burial of heaven with both hands and slashed at the Xitigarbha divine armor with a 1,000-foot-long sword light. Sky-shattering sword. The 1,000-foot-long golden sword light contained a wisp of sword intent. Its power and aura had increased. This slash seemed to have the power to tear apart the world as it slashed at the Xitigarbha divine armor's head. A hint of disdain flashed through the Xitigarbha divine armor's dark green eyes. It raised its sturdy left front claw and swatted at the giant golden sword with a claw that was wreathed in raging golden flames. Bang! Golden flames splashed in the sky amidst a deafening sound. The Xitigarbha divine armor was knocked back dozens of feet. The towering mountain beneath it was also on the verge of collapsing. Dense cracks appeared on its surface, and countless pieces of rubble collapsed. The giant golden sword was also smashed to pieces, turning into golden fragments and hurricanes that scattered in all directions. The Xitigarbha divine armor clearly did not expect the power of Ji Tianqing's swordsmanship to be so powerful. It had suffered a loss due to its carelessness, so it immediately became more cautious. It looked at Ji Tianqing with murderous eyes. Roar! The Xitigarbha divine armor roared and opened its wide and flat bloody mouth, spitting out endless glazed heavenly flames that poured down like a flood. Before Ji Tianqing could launch a counterattack, Yunyao, who had been waiting for a long time, brandished the reverse water divine sword and released a huge ice shield. An icy blue light shield with a radius of 1,000 feet enveloped her and Ji Tianqing, protecting them tightly. The celestial glaze fire that descended from the sky fiercely slammed into the icy blue light barrier, causing a series of muffled sounds to erupt. Bang 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 bang. The icy blue light barrier trembled violently and emitted a dazzling cold light. However, it did not shatter, and not even a crack appeared. No matter how terrifying the celestial glaze fire was, it was blocked by the icy blue light barrier. It could not hurt Ji Tianqing and Yunyao at all. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Ji Bai and Shou He, who were hiding in the dark, seized the opportunity and cast a spell to launch an attack. World Return to Origin. Sword of all directions. The two of them appeared out of thin air on the left and right sides of the Xitigarbha divine armor. They slashed out a huge sword brilliance that blotted out the sky and covered the earth, slashing the back and ribs of the Xitigarbha divine armor. Another series of muffled bangs rang out, and the Xitigarbha divine armor was forced to retreat. The pitch-black scales on its back and ribs were also slashed by the sword light, causing flames to splatter all over the sky. An incomparably powerful impact force fiercely struck the mountain beneath it. With a series of loud rumbling sounds, the mountain collapsed on the spot and collapsed into pieces. Countless huge rocks piled up into a pile of rubble and ruins, splashing out monstrous red flames and debris. The Xitigarbha divine armor became more and more furious. Its huge body twisted and swung its sturdy tail, smashing it fiercely towards Ji Bai. Ji Bai realized that something was wrong and immediately waved his sword to block. Bang! The giant tail that was more than 20 feet long shattered his defense and sent him flying 10 miles away, smashing into the rubble. The Xitigarbha divine armor still wanted to pounce over and take advantage of the situation to kill Ji Bai. Shou He had already rushed over without caring about his own safety. He waved his sword and stabbed out hundreds of cold lights, enveloping its head. Ding ding ding. A series of crisp sounds of metal colliding rang out. Sparks continuously burst out from the head of the Xitigarbha divine armor. It was dizzy from the sword light. Its attack was blocked, so it frantically waved its claws and fiercely slapped at Shou He. Shou He had already retreated 10,000 feet away and dodged its attack. Ji Tianqing rushed over again and waved the Burial of Heaven sword, slashing out a golden sword that flickered with lightning with all his strength. Broken Moon Sword. The sword light that was 1,000 feet long descended from the sky with the divine might of thunder and struck the Xitigarbha divine armor. Boom! It was smashed into the rubble on the spot, and a long and narrow white mark appeared on its back. Chapter 1759. While Ji Bai and Shou He were repelling the Xitigarbha divine armor, Ji Tianqing used his strongest trump card. He rushed to the front of the Xitigarbha divine armor as fast as a stream of light. He raised his left palm and released endless golden divine flames. God-slaying spear. The destructive golden flames condensed into a 30-meter-long spear and stabbed at the wound on the back of the Xitigarbha divine armor. The defense of the Xitigarbha divine armor was extremely strong, but its speed was not fast. It was too late to realize that something was wrong. Bang! With a loud, muffled explosion, the god-slaying spear stabbed into its back, penetrating its internal organs and exploding. A large mass of flesh and internal organs were burned to ashes by the golden divine flames. The Xitigarbha divine armor roared in pain, spitting out blood and flesh foam from its bloody mouth. It struggled and rolled wildly in the ruins. Seeing this scene, Yunyao decisively seized the opportunity and rushed over with the water reverse divine sword. Heavenly water line, sword separates the world. She held the water reverse divine sword with both hands and used all her strength to slash out 100-meter-long icy blue sword light. Boom! The Xitigarbha divine armor could not dodge in time and was immediately slashed in the back by the sword light. The huge bloody hole with a radius of 30 meter long was immediately cut open by the sword light, and a 20-meter long wound opened. Black-red blood sprayed out like a fountain. The terrifying cold air of the water reverse divine sword invaded its body and immediately froze its flesh and internal organs. It wailed in pain a few times, and dark golden-colored glazed heavenly fire gushed out of its body. It desperately drilled into the rubble and ruins, trying to escape back to the depths of the ground. Ji Tianqing had already planned this, so how could he let it escape so easily? He took out a mysterious black talisman from his space ring, made a few gestures with both hands, and released a few dazzling lights to activate the talisman. Soul-stabilizing divine talisman. With a low shout, the black talisman ignited with flames and immediately turned into a black stream of light, flying toward the Xitigarbha divine armor. Whoosh! The mysterious black stream of light instantly drilled into the body of the Xitigarbha divine armor, releasing a mysterious invisible power. Immediately, the roars of the Xitigarbha divine armor came to an abrupt end. Its frantically struggling body also stiffened, and it was stunned on the spot. It was as if it had been petrified, as if it had lost its consciousness and remained motionless on the spot. Seeing this scene, Ji Bai and Shohei revealed puzzled expressions. Even Yunyao was surprised. She looked at Ji Tianqing in disbelief. Tianqing, you sealed its soul. How did you do it? Ji Tianqing smiled and explained, when I was at the God Bestowment Mountain, I saved the third elder's life, so he gave me a bunch of talismans and pills as thanks. The soul-stabilizing sacred talisman was a saint-level talisman that he gave me. It can seal one's soul. Martial artists and demons below the martial sage realm are unable to withstand the power of the soul-stabilizing sacred symbol. I see. Yunyao was enlightened. She smiled faintly and said, saint-level talismans are priceless treasures. You used them just like that? Ji Tianqing waved his hand and said, to be able to capture a sixth-stage crossing tribulation realm Xitigarbha divine armor, it was worth it to use a saint-level talisman. Yao Yao, rest for a while. I'll deal with this Xitigarbha divine armor. After speaking, he flew to the rubble and used a capturing technique to put the Xitigarbha divine armor into the sword world. He personally escorted the Xitigarbha divine armor into the sword world and landed in the peaceful Soil City. In the peaceful Soil City, nearly 8,000 Earth Spirit Clan people were working and cultivating as usual. Ji Tianqing entered the city governor's mansion and asked the guards to find the clan leader, the Golden Mountain King. After the Golden Mountain King bowed to him, he asked, Young master, what are your orders? Ji Tianqing smiled and said, I just captured an ancient mutated beast. I'm going to give it to the Earth Spirit Clan as the clan's guardian divine beast. The Golden Mountain King's eyes widened. He asked in surprise, what ancient mutated beast? Ji Tianqing brought him to a spacious square. Only then did he reach out and release a golden light, releasing the Xitigarbha divine armor. The 1,000-foot-long Xitigarbha divine armor landed on the square with a plop, causing the ground to tremble and dust to fly into the air. When the Golden Mountain King saw the Xitigarbha divine armor's appearance, his eyes widened in shock. This ancient mutated beast, seems to be the descendant of the burrowing earth beast. Its strength and aura are so powerful, far surpassing the essence soul realm. Could it have reached the tribulation realm? Ji Tianqing smiled and nodded. That's right. This is the ancient mutated beast Xitigarbha divine armor. It's a mutated beast between a spirit beast and a divine beast. If it has enough opportunities and resources, it can also grow to the level of a divine beast in the future. Most importantly, this giant beast is the legendary overlord of the earth. It can control the earth and mineral veins. The Golden Mountain King exclaimed for a while before gradually coming back to his senses. He said excitedly, that's right. For us Earth Spirit Clan, the burrowing earth beast is the best pet and companion. This Xidagarba divine armor has a part of the bloodline of a divine beast. It's a divine beast for us. Chapter 1760. Yunyao's reverse water divine sword was definitely a divine weapon for digging ore veins. Even if the golden crow copper ore was incomparably sturdy, she could still use the divine sword to easily dig it out from the ground. Everyone worked for a full 2 hours before they dug out the 1,000-foot-long ore vein. Unfortunately, the ore vein was no longer complete. It had been damaged by the Xidagarba divine armor and broken into several pieces. Ji Tianqing kept a portion of the golden crow copper ore and put it into his spatial ring. He put the remaining pieces of the ore vein into the sword world and let the people of the Earth Spirit clan bury the ore vein underground. After doing all this, everyone left the underground and flew back into the air. Ji Tianqing said with a gratified expression, "Although the process was somewhat dangerous and difficult, we worked together. Not only did we get through the difficulties, but we also got such a rich harvest. Everyone, let's find a place to rest for a while. After recovering our magic power, we will continue forward." After saying that, he brought Yunyao, Ji Bai, and Shohei and landed on a pale golden mountain peak. Yunyao used the power of the reverse water divine sword to set up a small formation to resist the power of the colored glass heavenly fire. Everyone stayed in the light barrier of the formation, took pills, sat down, and circulated their energy to adjust their breathing. However, just as everyone sat down and before they could start cultivating, a sinister sneer sounded in the sky. "He he he he. You 4 little guys are really stupid and ridiculous. Encountering little fat sheep like you, if I don't take advantage of you, I won't be able to live with myself." This was the voice of a middle-aged man. His voice was sharp and ear-piercing, and it was so cold that it made people feel very uncomfortable. Ji Tianqing, Yunyao, and the others immediately looked up at the sky. They saw a middle-aged man wearing a black robe and holding a black feather fan in the sky 1,000 feet away. This person had a thin figure and wore a loose black robe, revealing a pale and narrow face. There were 2 mysterious tattoos on his cheeks, and a black spider pattern was imprinted on his forehead. His long hair was also wriggling. Upon closer inspection, one would discover that his thick, shoulder-length hair was actually made up of countless thin, black snakes. This person's entire body was emitting a dense evil aura. His sinister appearance caused people to feel fear in their hearts. Moreover, his strength had far surpassed Ji Bai and Shohei, and he'd attained the 6th level of the Tribulation Realm. Ji Tianqing looked at him for a while and frowned. He secretly sent a voice transmission to Yunyao and the other 2, "This guy is obviously an evil man. He doesn't have good intentions. Everyone, be careful." Yunyao nodded to show that she understood. Ji Bai and Shohei immediately dispersed and used their concealment techniques to hide in the sea of fire, ready to attack at any time. The black-robed man looked down at Ji Tianqing and the others, turning a blind eye to the actions of Ji Bai and Shohei. "Ha ha ha, little fellow, don't try to play tricks in front of this monarch, and don't even think about resisting. Let me give you a word of advice. Obediently hand over all the treasures you have on you, as well as the mine you just dug up." At this point, the black-robed man paused for a moment, and his gaze fell upon the burial of heaven and water reversal. Feeling the aura of the water reversal sword, his pupils immediately constricted, and a thick sense of shock flashed through his eyes. Immediately, his tone was somewhat hurried, and his voice was sharp as he shouted coldly, "And your treasured swords, you have to obediently hand them over to this monarch. Otherwise, this monarch will bury you in the sea of fire, and not even your bones will remain." Hearing these 2 sentences, Ji Tianqing and Yunyao's eyes flashed with cold killing intent. Ji Tianqing stared at him coldly and asked, "We don't know you, but you want to kill us and rob us. It can be seen that you are an evil beast. However, you dare to rob us alone. I'm afraid that the one who will die is you." The black-robed man immediately laughed mockingly, waving the black feather fan, and said with contempt, "Ha ha ha. This monarch really didn't see wrongly. You 4 idiots are all inexperienced rookies. In the entire ruins of God, who doesn't know the name of the Black Feather Association? We, the Black Feather Association, don't need a reason or an excuse to rob and kill anyone. Fine, this monarch is merciful and will let you die knowing. This monarch is Yiya, the second-in-command of the Black Feather Association. Remember, we, the Black Feather Association, will never fight alone." As his voice fell, 9 figures immediately appeared in the sky around the mountain. Swish! 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 9 Tribulation Realm powerhouses with different appearances and ferocious auras stood in the sea of fire, surrounding the entire mountain. Most of these 9 Tribulation Realm powerhouses had the strength of the 2nd to 4th level of the Tribulation Realm. Among them, there was a white-haired old man, a burly man, a middle-aged scholar, and 2 dwarfs with a thick build. However, they all had a common characteristic, which was that their faces were ferocious, and their bodies exuded a bloodthirsty aura. Among them, a burly man in black armor laughed loudly and said, "Second in command, we are still in a hurry to support the Great Master. Let's end this quickly. These little rookies, just treat them as an appetizer. We can easily get rid of them. Why do you have to talk nonsense with them?" The other Tribulation Realm powerhouses also nodded in agreement, revealing ferocious and bloodthirsty sneers. They all took out their magic treasures and weapons, staring at Ji Tianqing and Yunyao with murderous eyes, and slowly approached them. Yiya, the second-in-command, waved his black feather fan and said with a smile, "You are a group of boors who only know how to fight and kill. Don't scare these 2 little guys. Especially that little beauty, she is simply an outstanding beauty. She is so beautiful that it makes one's heart itch." Before he finished speaking, the group of Tribulation Realm powerhouses all laughed evilly, revealing an expression of sudden realization. "Second in command, we understand. Don't worry. Second in command, don't be impatient. We will capture that little beauty immediately and send her to you. We want to rob her of her wealth, but we also want to rob her of her beauty. Brothers, what are you waiting for? Let's go together and get rid of them quickly. Don't let the second-in-command wait anxiously." Everyone shouted a few times and immediately waved their swords and sabers, using their secret techniques to kill Ji Tianqing and Yunyao. Ji Bai and Shou He were eager to protect their masters. They immediately used their secret sword techniques, stabbing out sword light and saber light that filled the sky, blocking the few Tribulation Realm powerhouses. Ji Tianqing and Yunyao also immediately took action. They waved their swords and used their secret techniques to block the other party's attacks. Both sides engaged in a fierce battle in the sea of fire. They both used their full strength and hundreds of strange techniques, fighting until the sky turned dark. The colorful brilliance of magic power condensed into various kinds of light and shadow, intertwining and colliding in the sky, making deafening sounds. The violent and raging shock waves swept away the sea of fire and spread in all directions. Although Ji Tianqing and the other 3 fought back with all their strength, it was difficult for them to fight against the 9 Tribulation Realm powerhouses. They were beaten back and were in danger. Seeing this scene, Yiya stood in the sky calmly, watching the battle with a sneer on his face. In his opinion, Ji Tianqing and the other 3 were bound to die. There was no possibility of survival. You're tuning into the Xiaofan's Wuxia Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.